Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Kyle's Corner. I'm joined by two friends of mine that I haven't talked to in a while, so this is going to be really exciting. I'm joined by Liene from Liene's Library and Alex from Alex is Alive, apparently. How you guys doing? You want to take time to introduce yourselves, and for those of you who may or may not be alive, maybe explain why you might not be alive. Liene, I want to start with you.
I am alive, as far as I know. But what else was I supposed to say?
Just who you are, you know?
But you already said I am Liene. Liene's Library. That hasn't changed in the last minute.
Yeah, that's very true.
This is Liene. Liene, introduce yourself. And I am, in fact, alive. I just haven't done BookTube in 4 months. So that was the last review that I did. It's been a while.
That makes me feel so much better because it's been like 3 weeks since my last video, which is so much until you say 4 months, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm good.
I look back at 10 months ago is like when I came back from a break, and I've done 8 videos in the last 10 months. I was like, well, I suck at this.
It's not that bad.
Or it's quality over quantity.
Something like that.
Yeah.
It's only better if he also has the Doggos Joy, not CV. And I did not know that Liene has not read Lightbringer yet. That's crazy.
My office is a mess, but there's Cora. And, this way. Oh my god, I'm bad at this. There's Loki.
They look dead. Did you kill them? We need a question mark on them being alive.
Yeah, they're both dead. I'm alive because they didn't make it.
It was like the passage there, and you're the one that came out the victor.
Pretty much, yeah. They didn't stand a chance.
So I've actually been a regular on Alex's Discord for like 3 years, and this is the first time Alex and I have ever talked on camera together. So hi, Alex. Nice to officially meet you.
You too, Kyle.
You starstruck.
Even though we've been talking for years.
Yeah.
But what's been up with you, man? I know you've been kind of doing your other hobbies and stuff lately, but what's been up?
Yeah, I mean, golfing, playing games, starting to read. I actually watched a lot of TV, which is surprising. I have on several occasions yelled at Liene for not having read Lightbringer because she's the worst. I don't know.
I have renewed my library loan of the Kindle edition for the 6th time.
You have 4 copies of Dark Age behind you, but you haven't read Lightbringer.
I also have 4 copies of Lightbringer, but I don't want to read them those copies. That's why I keep getting the Kindle from the library.
Lay them all out and just read 1 chapter here, and then just keep going until you're done.
No, I can't touch them. They're special.
Fine, don't. But yeah, just got busy with work. Kids, 3 and a 5-year-old takes up a lot of time.
Sure.
So I'm tired by the end of the day, and I try to read and I fall asleep. So I do other things, pretty much.
Yeah, I'm sure it's really exhausting. Do you do audiobooks at all when you do decide to read, or are you just always a physical reader?
I still do. This was the first year that my Audible credits were just sitting there for the longest time, where it was hey, you have 12 credits still. I was like, oh, I should buy some books. I just
got an email saying I have 8 credits, and I spent them all on, or not all, but I spent a bunch on the graphic audios of Red Rising.
Of course you did.
Oh, nice. I get the 12 pack for the year or whatever, and they're gone by March. I don't know how you guys keep them for so long.
Because I wasn't reading very much. I used to. I was going month to month, just trying to. I was I don't have any credits, but I'm going to buy that anyway.
Ian,
I try to use the credits only on stuff that I can't get from the library.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'll check all my libraries first and make sure that I can't get it from that. And then
something that I want to always have. I have First Law because I just need to have that on tap.
Hold on.
Yeah, I just got the Demon in White audiobook because I realized I didn't have it, and it's I should have that because I'm gonna re-listen to it at some point. Yeah.
I don't know.
You read Disquiet Gods?
I haven't finished Disquiet Gods yet.
Me neither. But I was
started 200 pages into it, and then I started watching Silo, and then I forgot to finish the book. So
Silo's pretty good. Yeah,
it is. And now I'm reading that book.
Yeah, I have the book for that. I wanted to read it before watching it.
I DNF'd it.
You don't like the book?
I DNF'd it because how it was written is it was 3 or 4 different short stories that he kind of decided to then make a book. And then the show improved on each of those individual aspects and made them more cohesive, which they just have that luxury of hindsight. with.
It was
So-
self-pubbed first, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so it's not like I think the book is bad. It's just that I already had watched the show and I was like, oh, this is just like the inferior version. But I might continue. Like I didn't think it was poorly done.
So interesting though. How far into it were you?
56%, something like that. I basically finished the first season almost, not quite.
Okay, because I was gonna say that the first season's half the book, so
Yeah. So I
So
might
yeah.
I waited till I got to the end of where the show ended and then I stopped
Yeah.
and I was like, I might just watch the show, but we'll see. What was
The
the last
last
book
book
that you
that I
finished, Alex and Liana?
the last book that I finished was Eldest 4 months ago, because I've read a bunch of stuff since then that I haven't finished yet. So the only other thing would be since I'm DMing this, that I've read this multiple times from start to finish because I'm DMing. That's why. How about you, Liana? What books do you read?
I think the last book I finished was The Night by Gene Wolfe, because we're reading The Wizard Knight together.
Oh, really? What do you think about that? I own that and I've been curious about trying it.
I mean, it's Gene Wolfe, so I feel like I don't know what I think until I read The Wizard, which I'm going to read next or soonish. Because it's, part 1 of 2 and it's Gene Wolfe. So like everything is a mystery and nothing makes sense. So
You've done Book of the New Sun already?
yeah, speaking of, I got so mad the other day because I got a comment on my Book of the New Sun video telling me, begging me to please give Sun Eater a chance. And like, first of all, Alex and I have been talking about Sun Eater since before it was cool.
We have live chats of every fucking video, every book.
Yeah.
Sorry, before
anyone cared. And then the next part of the comment was like, because Sun Eater is like 1,000,000 times better than Book of the New Sun. And I was like, everything about this comment is heinous and I hate you.
Yeah, like people don't look up, like whenever like Bookborn gets things about like you should try Brandon Sanderson. I'm like, do you guys not look at what's going
Her
on?
name is
before you comment?
Bookborn.
People are nuts.
She was in Sanderson's house making content.
But has she
they're
read
not
his
the real
books?
fans.
Like you can go to someone's house. And like...
Yeah, true. I
Also,
didn't even know that he wrote books.
We're going live at 9:30 because these two live on opposite sides of the continent, and this is the time that works. So just go with
I barely got home from work in time for this.
it. Yeah, it was the exact time that would work for all three of us.
It's my fault. This is why doing collabs with me sucks. I'm like, I can do 8:30 Eastern or later. Everyone's like, what? What about 10 a.m. on a Saturday? I'm like, no, I have kids.
I
They
have
sports.
children.
I can't do that.
Also your fault.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's probably better that you're being a dad and not wasting your time on YouTube.
Probably
Kevin,
true.
this is not true. It is not bedtime. It is just waking up time. I almost made a coffee before this, but I didn't. I just had to make tea. So being responsible.
Very responsible.
Where are you at, Kyle?
I'm in Canada, like central Canada. So like I'm right above Minneapolis, like directly above.
So what time is it for you? 8:30?
8:30, yeah. Yeah, right in the middle. So what are some books that you guys have really hated recently? I know recently is relative for you, Alex, but like,
Let's go check
in living memory.
Goodreads.
The last time I remember you really hating something was Empire of the Vampire. And I had wanted to read it and see what I thought before this, but I can't bring myself to do that kind of stuff. So
It's like 800 pages.
I didn't want to finish it. I just wanted to sample.
I was going to say, and Alex didn't read them all. So.
You were very upset that I bailed. And I had lost my voice dunking on that book in that live chat. I was so disappointed.
That's your punishment for not finishing it.
Truth be told, it hurt to speak during that video.
No.
I read the first like 30 pages once, and I was like, I'm good. I'm okay with that.
I mean, honestly, that's really all you need to read. Because, like, if the first 30 pages, if you're annoyed, like, well, it's going to be exactly like that for the next 800. And if you love it, it's going to be exactly like that for the next 800. So,
yeah, I guess I wouldn't say I hated it, but the other book that I did not care for was iRobot. I couldn't have been more bored reading that book. And it's not even a long book.
Yeah, I thought it was very dry.
I could not get into it. Just like when I tried do Android's Dream of Electric Sheep, I was like, what is this?
That one is so weird though that like it kept my
Yeah.
attention because I was like, I mean, well, first of all, it's called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and I was like, it's really on me that I'm surprised that there are electric sheep in this, like, but I was not expecting that. So
I haven't read
I was just too bored.
any Philip K. Dick yet. You liked Rendezvous with Rama though, right, Alex? So like, it's not
I
like
did.
all classic sci-fi.
No, Rendezvous was great. I surprisingly was like super into it, and not a whole lot happens in that book.
Yeah, I just read it and I thought it was fine. Like,
Yeah,
I didn't
loved
dislike it by any means, but it was just like not what I expected. I expected more actual aliens, and
Yeah,
that is not what you get. So
no,
a
not at
little
all.
bit of expectation problems.
You don't get anything. They're like, here's a ship. Imagine things yourself.
Well, Denny V is going to be doing an adaptation of it, so
It's going to be amazing.
I am
It's gonna be
really
a
pumped for
spectacle.
that. I think it's something that in visual medium I'm going to like a lot more.
You'll see it in IMAX. It'll be perfect. Just like Dune. See it on the biggest screen possible.
I wish. So the nearest IMAX is 2 hours away from me.
see, I may have to sit in an hour of traffic each way every day, but I have multiple IMAX options.
Yeah, that is a trade-off. But my 2 hours to and from the IMAX is going to be less than all of your driving and traffic,
know
so I still
what?
come out ahead.
You know what?
Go California traffic.
Evie, I'm reading The Literomancer right now. I think I'm a little bit behind, but yeah, we're currently rereading The Paper Menagerie together.
Brutal. Absolutely brutal.
Yeah, you read it all in one day, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I do not recommend doing that.
Why would you ever do
No.
that?
Because I was like, I had to read it for like a patron vlog, and it was the last day of the month. So I was like, all right, let's knock this out. And like the vlog is just like each
poor
clip of
time.
me in a different emotional state. Being like,
I'm so tired.
Which one made you cry the most?
Probably Paper
Or most of
Menagerie.
it? Yeah, that's
but
the one that got me too.
also the Literomancer also made me cry. And
Yeah,
one
I
other one
stopped
made me
before that
cry.
one because I know that one's really sad, and I haven't been in the mood to like be that sad. So
Yeah, it's an emotional
when you
roller coaster.
when you do like a spoiler vlog for your patrons, do you just like never tell anybody else what you think about that book? Is it like sworn to
Oh.
secrecy?
I mean, like, yes and no. I don't know. Like, I mean, like, I probably like won't go in depth anywhere else, but like in a wrap up, I'll be like, oh, I liked this, or oh, I hated this, or whatever. If it's like one of the worst books that I read that year, it's going on my worst of the year, and I'll say why. But like, yeah.
Yeah, because I was checking your Goodreads, and there's just like a few random books that like you have no rating for, and I was like, "Ooh, I wonder what you thought about this." And I'm like, "This."
Well,
is a
those are. It's
patron
usually it's either a patron one or like when I've done like TBR swaps. Then like while I'm reading
You have
them, like
to-
It's
before
called
we have the
adding
live.
Goodreads stats.
Yeah,
And then
she doesn't
in
even read
theory,
that
I like.
much.
In theory, I'm always like, I'll go back and update it after we do the TBR like chat, and then I never do. So
Yeah, it's I recently started using hardcover, which is like Goodreads but better, except worse because nobody's on it.
that's
So, like,
with every.
Yeah, so like every book that I add, it'll be like 4 people have read this book, and I'm like, great. So it's like it's not good for any meaningful data, but it's just like a better app, and it's just funny.
So, honest question: do either of you use Goodreads for any reason other than tracking books that you've completed?
I actually do like the data accumulation portion of it, but I think the way that I read data tends to be different than like how people talk about it. Because a low rating doesn't necessarily mean that people didn't like the book. Like I usually go into the ratings a little bit deeper. The Grace of Kings is a good example. It has like a 3.9 on Goodreads.
Yeah.
So then people think, oh, like it's just this book that a lot of people hated. But if you actually go and look at it, it's like 42% or something like that of people gave it 4 stars, and then like 25 gave it 5 stars. So it's most people actually did quite like it. It's just a higher portion of 4 stars than what normally those two numbers would be inversed. Whereas, so that looks really bad. But then if you get a book that's maybe like a 4.2, but then you look at it and there's a bunch of 2 and 1 stars and 3 stars, you're like, okay, well, people actually love or hate this book. So it's just like, if you go a little bit beyond the first number, I think it tells you more.
Yeah, in general, I feel like books that are polarizing, like it'll be, if you go and actually look at the distribution, it'll be like all 5s and all 1s and like nothing in the middle.
Yeah. Sorry. The name of the app is Hardcover.
Yeah. I guess for me, it's just like, I don't know that I've ever like used Goodreads as like a social media platform. I stopped doing reviews a long time ago on it, and like I don't seek other people's like content on Goodreads. I'm just like, this is what I'm reading, and then I finished it. I liked it, and then I move on. So when people like Goodreads kind of sucks sometimes, but then I'm just like, I don't use it for anything other than like I finished a book again. Like so.
Well, the two things that I'd use it for, like, so if I'm struggling to think of things to put on like a poll for a buddy read for like Patreon, then I'll be like, what's new? And like go to Goodreads, like latest fantasy, like page, and be like, oh, this looks terrible. Like, but and then if I like hated a book, then I'll like go seek out, like sort it to 1 stars and go and find my people and be like, yeah, that's exactly it was stupid.
I use the social function of Goodreads for 2 reasons. One, I like seeing when Genghis Khan goes through a flurry of hating the first binding, so he'll just like all the 1 and 2 star reviews that are new. So his passion of hatred for that book gives me life. And then the second reason is to just like see when friends of mine finish books that they told me that they just started. Like other Alex, tall guy Alex, and I will be in like a buddy read for a book. I'll be like, oh, I'm on like chapter 2, and I'll be like, great. And then I'll check Goodreads the next day, and he'll have given it 4 stars. And I'm like, you didn't even tell me about that book, man. It took you a day.
Just.
Do you ever look up Goodreads ratings before you buy a book?
No.
Not usually. I would if I had heard nothing about a book and I just wanted to see if it's like, I mean, I don't want to spend money on a book that has like a 3.2 or something like that, but I don't like give it that much weight.
But also, like, I would if it's a book that I'm like really interested in, and I feel like, especially if it's the kind of book where without having read it, I suspect that it's going to be polarizing and like maybe I'll hate it. But I'm like, if it's getting kind of mid ratings, I'm like, it probably doesn't have mass appeal.
I feel like I got in a really bad habit of like, I'm not super up to the know of like what books are good or not. So like I would just read the description and see if I like it. But I got into a bad habit for like 6 months where I was just like, I haven't seen that book before. Goodreads, and I'm like, oh, it's a 3-star. Like I'm not getting that one. And then like I feel like it's a double-edged sword because sometimes I'm like, all right, if people I know like whose reviews I agree with like it, I'm gonna like it. But then I'm like, I just want to be surprised. There's been a couple of times when I got into a book and I was like, oh, that's what this is. I shouldn't have bought this. So,
I think I'll usually like look at like the up like a few reviews, that are like at the top, like a 5, a 3, and a 1 to kind of see like if it's like people who are giving it 5 stars are saying, like, oh, like, it was almost enough sex in this book, but I could have used a little bit more. And then I'm like, oh no. Or if like the 1 stars are like, this was so complicated, intellectual, I was so bored. Then I'm like, oh, okay, this sounds pretty good. So just like see what people are like buzzing about and complaining about, but not like how many are rating it a certain way, just like what the complaints or praise is.
Sometimes I use it to see if the problems that I have with something are going to continue. Like I actually just recently DNF'd a book, Django Wexler's new one, How to Become a Dark Lord or Die Trying or something like that. And I read like 3 chapters and I was like, I have significant problems with this book. And I just checked Goodreads and like 4 people that I knew that were reading it were like, this guy doesn't know how to write women and everything's sexualized and everything is bad about it. I'm like, yeah, okay, this isn't going to get better. So I just stopped reading it.
I mean, okay, on that topic, what male author does write women really well?
Joe Abercrombie.
Okay, stop it.
Ken Liu also writes women very well.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I would say Martin writes women very well. Sanderson, most of the time, writes women really well. There's definitely more, but those are the ones that I always like refer to. Liana, do you actually think Sanderson doesn't write women well, like as a specific criticism? Or
I just don't think he writes
Sanderson
well.
Hater? Yeah, okay.
So like fine. Women is just one of the things.
Mark Lawrence does write women really well. I forgot about him, but no, he's really good.
It's not the worst, but
Winter is a fantastic character from the Shadow Campaigns, and that's the only woman that Django has written that isn't cringy that I've seen.
Is it?
What
just
about you,
like,
Alex? Do you have an answer
for who does it well?
Yeah.
I actually think a lot of the time, there are some obviously glaring exceptions, but I think generally Stephen King writes characters really well, so including women.
Yeah, until he doesn't. I would say
That's
half
what
the
I said.
time.
There's glaring exceptions, but it's like he like does like when he's good, he's like really good. Like he can write
Yeah.
women really well, but he also can write everything really badly, so including women. So
Christopher Rocchio wrote Volca very well. That was it for you. No, Cat was really the one that he knocked out of the park. Exactly. Remember her? I can say certainly not Jim Butcher.
He butchers
Not Jim
them, would you
Butcher.
say?
Unless you live in a vampire sex fantasy,
I
which
think
I
Andrzej
love those
Sapkowski
books,
writes
but
women decently well.
Yeah, I
Does he?
agree. Yeah.
I'm trying
Yeah,
to
actually,
think.
I don't think there's been any of his female characters that I felt were written like in a way where I'm like, oh, he's just like trying to write a woman. Like, 'cause
Yeah.
Andrzej
I think
Sapkowski? Yeah.
as,
I mean, I guess
as
John
a
Gwynn did
man,
a pretty good job, but like some of his characters are really solid, and a lot of them are just kind of like bland, generic fantasy characters.
yeah,
I don't know.
like as a man, I would say the thing that sets off my alarm bells is when I feel like the guy writing the character is like, I'm gonna write a woman, and it's like just generally
Instead of
speaking,
just writing a character.
like that just doesn't work out well. It's like being a woman is part of who a person is, but it's not like they're still a person. And I just think, that's like what Martin said. Like he's just writing a character. So apparently Garth Nix is good, but I haven't read. Well, okay, but Martin is the progenesis of Joe's writing career. So
Who's Garth Nix?
He wrote Sabriel.
He wrote Sabriel
and other things.
I don't know what that is.
Tchaikovsky does write female spider as well. That is.
Not just spiders. I think in Guns of the Dawn, what's her name? Is her name Emily? I think she's a female character.
I don't know if I super agree with Neil Gaiman. I don't think it's like terrible, but like there's been a couple times where I'm like, okay, but what do you think, Liana?
I mean, like, I think better than Stephen King, but it's kind of like Stephen King, where it's like when Neil Gaiman is really good at writing characters, but he also sometimes misses the mark. But like,
I think that's fair.
He's very good at it. When he's good at it, he's very good at it for both males and females and children and every kind of human.
GGK also writes really well, good women, until he doesn't. This is a similar thing where it's like sometimes he's just like, but generally speaking, I think it's pretty good. Well, first of all, her name is Coraline Sal. So, well, there's lots of answers.
I just assumed we were talking about some other author when I saw Caroline. I was like, I don't know what character that is.
I don't know any of these names that are happening.
Well, Emily Marshwick is from Guns of the Dawn.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
Because I was trying to remember if her name was Emily. Yeah.
What Tchaikovsky have you read, Liana? I didn't really remember that you liked him.
Well, I really like Guns of the Dawn. I thought Children of Time was like, there were things that I really liked about it, but like overall, I didn't think it was that good, like the total package. And then similarly with what's that one with the really beautiful cover? It's a city.
City of Last Chances.
City of Last Chances. Again, it was like there was stuff in there that I was like, this is like so brilliant, like the concepts here and like the setup. And I just felt so like crammed and rushed that I was like, I want to like take time with this and like dig into this. And I feel like you're just like whipping me through this in a way that I can't enjoy.
Seeing this in your wrap up, and I think you should try House of Open Wounds because I just finished
Everyone
it.
is saying that.
It was so much better. Like I liked the first one a lot, but it's very, very focused. Like it only follows like 6 or 7 characters in one location, and like their various dramas. And I think that could solve some of your.
Well, if I find a good, because it's been a minute since City of Last Chances, so if I find a good like recap somewhere, I might.
You don't need a recap. I'm super serious. Like
right.
It's set in a different city, pretty far away, with only one returning character, and that returning character recaps the 2 or 3 things that you need to know about him. So
cool. I might read it. Oh yeah, I think Philip Pullman writes females pretty well.
That's pretty funny. How did neither of us say Pierce Brown?
Because I think Pierce Brown is also like Stephen King, where it's like he can be really good at it, and he can also be kind of terrible at it.
Yeah,
I think it's more the things that he puts female characters through are a little bit for spectacle.
Well, I feel like
especially in the first trilogy.
I feel like Pierce Brown now, like when I haven't read
Light
Space Springer, but like Dark Age and Iron Gold, because we also got POVs from females, and he's grown up a lot, and I feel like he's like thinking about things more maturely as a writer. So like seeing like what what's going on with Victra and with Virginia and all those like and with Lyria, like I feel like there's a lot more like attention to like their experience as opposed to just like how Darrow feels about people, which is like
it's true.
Yeah, and I mean, some of the things that happened in that first book, I had some issues with, and Red Rising is interesting to me. I think both of you like Red Rising more than I do, but I really like it. I just think in every book, Pierce makes a decision where he just wants to shock people, and that's like his only mission. Like he's like, oh, I haven't been shocking enough. Let me do X to shock people. And I'm of the school of thought where it's like you should do something that makes sense that's also shocking. And so each book has like one or two things, and I'm just like, I don't really like this.
That's because he tries to put a twist every 18 pages.
I know Golden Sun is like exhausting.
Yeah. Golden Sun is a marathon. Like you can't really stop it after you start it. This is a good question. Which women write men well?
I mean,
I feel like it's. I don't know about most, but it's definitely easier because men. I don't know.
Well, I mean, like I've talked about this a lot with like friends, like be they on BookTube or outside of BookTube. It's just like so many more books. Like when you're like taught how to read critically and stuff in school, it's a lot of material that is like male focused and male like male protagonists, male perspectives. So like we're just like much more like taught how to like empathize with like that perspective than the other way around. And so I don't even think that it's that like women are naturally better at writing men than men are at writing women. It's just like we're subjected to more male perspectives through our whole lives and like the stuff that we're like given to
men are
consume and
idiots
analyze
and can't ever get in the shoes of women on most occasions.
I think that's true. I also think though that like I mean obviously we're talking in generalities, but there's also times where I read a book written by a woman. And I don't have any examples off the top of my head, probably because I don't like those books. But it'll be like every man in the book is just like an over sexualized idiot.
You're thinking of Sarah J. Maas.
I haven't read any Sarah J. Maas, but I'm just like, oh, do you think like all men are like this? And so I'm like, like, and I can just imagine being on the other side of that, where it's like that every woman you read is like that, and you're getting really exhausting. So, generally speaking, we should just try to not do that.
Do you think it seems like it's worse in fantasy than it is in sci-fi? Because a lot of the authors that people were saying for men writing women were sci-fi authors and not fantasy authors. Because I think a lot of guys that write fantasy just like have no idea what women act like.
Or in general, I think it's just authors that like, because I mean, every author who's writing stories about evil has characters, but like a lot of authors are regarded as like character driven or character focused. And I feel like those authors just also are better at writing women because in general, they're like known for like thinking of like the human experience, be whoever that human is. Whereas like people who are not like character focused writers, then like they're not necessarily going to suck at writing women, but it's like a higher likelihood.
Yeah.
I
think Fonda Lee did a great job of writing most of the men in Greenbone. Or a lot of
very
different types of characters in that.
Very good at that.
Women too.
I also find it interesting, like I think about when Sanderson wrote Mistborn, and like I don't know how well
you know who's a woman who can't write women, in my opinion, and everyone's gonna like hate me now. It's okay, I'm used to it. R.F. Kuang.
Well, that's because she did the dumb version of like.
Can she write men either though?
Can she what?
Can she write?
No, because most of the characters in those books sucked. As much as I did enjoy that series for what it was when I read it, I actually really liked Poppy War and whatever the.
I liked Poppy War, but I
have liked all of her books, but
Rin is the most unlikable character ever created, though, and it's just like she really was like the dumb version of like a strong female character. Where like
I read. I was trying to finish The Burning God. I think it was like a month where I was finishing a bunch of trilogies in 1 month. And so it was like the last day of the month. So I binged like 75% of that book in one day. And she's like at her angriest and most douchey in that book. And I was like so angry that I was like snapping at people. I was fighting in Alex's Discord over nothing. And people were like, Kyle, what's gotten into you? And I'm like, I think I'm just riled up from this book. Like it's just gotten me. I've just gotten in this mindset of just toxicity.
But like my problem, or one of my many problems, was like, but particularly like with Rin, is that like in Poppy War, I mean, I agree she's like an unlikable character, but also like a lot of compelling characters are unlikable. Like you can still be interesting to follow, and she's just there's like not dynamic at all after Poppy War. She does all of her growing and changing in Poppy War, what little of it we get, and then what she is at the end of Poppy War, she just stays like that. Like there's nothing like about her character. Like she doesn't have
There's
to
no
get better
arc.
or worse, but there's nothing like dynamic about her like changing how she is, how she views things, how she interacts with things. Like it's just so one note. And I'm like, you can be awful. Like I don't care if you're awful. I mean, First Law is my favorite. Like be terrible, but like be interesting. Like your worst crime is that you're boring me to tears.
I agree,
Kyle,
and I
that's
think
twice already that she, for no reason, brought up First
For
Law.
no
so
reason.
just keep
it's like
the
the
tally.
third time. That's like the
We
third
should just,
time.
oh, it was the third time. We should just have a scoreboard up in the corner. So
Um,
that's number 3.
I will continue to read R.F. Kuang's books because I like them for what they're trying to do. But I think just fundamentally we disagree on like what a story should be. And I think Liene probably agrees based on her rant review for Babel, which is that R.F. Kuang has just sat down and been like, I don't care if my themes are too on the nose. I want to make sure people know what I'm saying. And I'm just like, that's what essays are for, Rebecca. Like we could write a story a little better.
That's why on Goodreads, like my review of Babel was like, as an essay, this is 5 stars. As a novel, 2 is generous.
Liene, are you aware of Laura's First Law rankings?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Are they
Her
controversial?
I mean, kind of. Like, they're not terrible. I just have never seen it before. She just finished Wisdom of Crowds. If I'm mistaken, The Blade itself is her favorite one of the whole series. And I think her second favorite one is The Heroes. Like, I don't know. It's just like a very, very crazy.
Certainly not.
I feel like those are ones that like someone who's read it 50,000 times, you know, like yours truly, like those are ones that like improve upon reread. Like where like the first time I read The Blade itself, the first time I read The Heroes, I was like, but then like because when I reread it over and over again, like the things that impress you the first time, like a surprise, a shock, a reveal, like you don't really care about that on a reread. And so like before they were hanged, The Heroes, like those like when I reread them, like I get so much more out of them and I like look forward to them more. But like on a first read, I don't think they're as like immediately impressive.
I mean, I liked all of them. So I'm not really calling her out that much. I'm just so surprised. She finished all of them and she's still like, that's my favorite. I'm like, that's crazy.
Blade itself is good. That's why.
So many iconic moments.
Alex, have you read Age of Madness? I feel like you stopped in the middle somewhere.
I stopped at what was it? Best Served Cold was the last one I read. So
I'll read Lightbringer when you finish the first one.
You won't.
That's so many.
It gives me a lot of time.
I have so many good books up here that I haven't read yet because I get my own way of reading books.
Well, let's imagine a magical world, Alex, where tomorrow you decided to become a reader again. What books would you pick up?
The one that I'm reading, which is this goofy. Oh, look, Apple made a TV show.
I have that copy as well.
Stupid.
Otherwise, I like the colors and stuff on it, but yeah.
Yeah. But I watched the show with my wife and immediately started reading the book because I was like, well, now I got to see what the book has.
Is that the omnibus or is that just the first one?
It's just the first one. I think I have all 3 of them, but no, so I started reading that just like when I I watched Fallout.
I just started watching that.
I love it. So it's amazing. And then I was like, hey, Kylie, do you think you'd be interested in this? And I tried to explain it. And I was like, let's just watch the trailer. She's like, yeah, let's watch it. And then she loved it, which then made me go play Fallout 1 and 2. And now I'm playing Fallout 3 again. So I've been in this watching a TV show and then going back to the source material kind of situation. So I don't know.
Yeah, I've never played
200
Fallout.
pages into Disquiet Gods. And I am like 400 pages into Brissinger, which the last time I tried to read the Inheritance Cycle, this happened where I got halfway through Brissinger and just like stopped reading Aragon. I don't really know why.
Have you read Aragon before?
I stopped halfway through book 3 like 12 years ago or whenever they first came out, like inexplicably just stopped reading it. And the same thing happened this time around. I just stopped for some reason.
Okay, so it's not destined to finish it.
Maybe.
I did finish the passage this time, but like I started reading the passage like not that long after it came out, which was like quite a few years ago now. And I was loving it. And then like this was like before BookTube or anything. So I didn't like DNF it because that wasn't a thing. I just was like lost steam and didn't continue. Yeah. And then I always thought I was like, oh yeah, there's like, because people, I think they made a show of it or something. I don't know. But I was like, I should try that again. And I started from the beginning again. And I was like, this is so good. Why did I give up on this? This is amazing. And then I got to the point where I stopped last time and I was like, oh. And that's like a third of the way through. And the other 2/3 of it, I was like, nope, it's not getting better. This is so long. I never want to read this. Why?
Mike, the same thing happened to Mike from Mike's book reviews. Like he DNF'd that book probably around the same time for the same reason.
Well, as soon as you do like this like big time skip, there's this big time skip. And like after that time skip, I just do not care.
I don't know what the trilogy is called. The first book is The Passage.
Yeah.
I forget what the next two are called.
Yeah,
it's by Justin Cronin. It's like a vampire apocalyptic book, something like that. But apparently something happens halfway-ish to the first book that, like, I guess is a big time skip.
It's like a third.
A lot of things change. And then some people have a lot of problems with
it. Because like the beginning of it, I feel like he does a really good job, in my opinion, getting you like really invested in the characters and in the situation. And like, I'm like super into it. And then we do this time skip and like, everyone that I was invested in, everything that I was invested in, it's like, that's not what we're doing anymore. It's new people. And there's like so many new people and I don't know any of them and I don't care about any of them. And I never at any point start to care about any of them. And it's like the whole rest of the book. And I'm just like, don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, it gets weirdly like soap opera-ish. And I'm like, I don't care about these people already. And now this is like really cringe. Like,
I should probably try it so then I can have an excuse to unhaul an entire
Well, Bookborn told me that she was obsessed with it when it came out. And I was like, really? How long ago was that? Have you read it recently? Because
that's funny. She's like that with Murakami too. I'm like, I don't know if you read it now, it would be your thing. But
she was like, I don't remember anything about it except that I liked it. So I was like, well, now I can't fight you about it.
Alex, are you a big horror fan?
For books, not particularly. I've read a couple, but it's not something that I generally like go for, unless there's some like really good recommendations for it. But like Stephen King was probably like my intro to actually sitting down and reading horror. Like I read some like 2 years ago, some like indie horror books that were like fine, but I don't know what to compare it against. It like most of it is just like books don't scare me, I guess. So reading horror is just like, I'd rather read some kind of like more interesting thriller than quote unquote like scary content.
Yeah, I was just gonna say like thrillers or mysteries or more.
Stephen Graham Jones. All right, you're gonna obnoxiously hear me type on my keyboard. Stephen Graham Jones.
Stephen Graham Jones. I DNF one of his most popular books that Evie's mad at me for, but then I really loved one of his novellas, Night of the Mannequins, and Jimmy really liked that. Murphy really liked it, and it was really good. Like it's a really short novella, and it's like an unreliable narrator, and that was really really good. If you guys want to try a short novella,
I think everything that I've read by Grady Hendrix.
Yeah,
I read My Best Friend's Exorcism, and I read it because an old coworker of mine works at the library here, and so she wanted to like do a book swap, and so she gave me that book, and I thought I wouldn't like it, and I actually thought it was like pretty good. Like I
think he does a good job of like mixing humor with horror, and in a way that never undercuts either one. Like he lets it be funny, and he also lets it be horrific.
Like a dark comedy.
But it's like I feel like a lot of when people do mix horror and comedy, like it's never horrific because they just always undercut the horror with comedy. Like they bring the jokes into the horror moments, and he's really good at not doing that. Like in what's the vampire one? The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. Like it was like kind of like funny and satirical, and it was like very like I thought witty. But then the moments that were like horrifying, he just let them be horrifying, and I was like on the edge of my seat and being like, oh my god, this is so messed up. Like what is gonna happen? Like I was like completely like freaking out about it, but like so like I think he balances them really well.
I agree. I also thought he wrote like a very convincing friendship. The two main characters' friendship, because like for My Best Friend's Exorcism, I would say the stakes of that book are obviously like, I mean, people are gonna die because it's horror, but the main stake is like these people might not be friends anymore if the things keep going the way that they're going, and that generally could be pretty not tension building, but it was really good because you actually believe that they are like very good friends. So I would definitely read more from him in the future.
Yeah, I read last year the How to Sell a Haunted House, and the like central like relationship or like people conflict, not the like horror thing in it, is between a brother and a sister who like don't get along, and like their parents have died, and so they're like trying to deal with selling the house and getting rid of the stuff. Hence how to sell a haunted house. And like I get along very well with my brother, but nevertheless, like growing up, like there's like tensions like from and like arguments we've had. And so like the relationship between this brother and sister, it felt like the dark mirror worst case scenario of like me and my brother, what that could be like. And I felt like he did a really good job of like showing like these like insane tensions that are like really dumb, but like can completely like destroy your life, like that, because they're like built on like childhood stuff that you can't really like shake. I thought like that, and then the horror stuff was like pretty good too.
That reminds me of that book that Tom Hanks narrated. It's just The Dutch House. Either I know Alex wouldn't have read that, but Liene, did somebody convince you to read that book? You know what that is? It's by Anne Patchett or something like that. It was a very popular book. Like, I mean, it has Tom Hanks narrating it, and I did not like it at all. I think it came out in 2021, but it's about an old house, and their like family dies or whatever, and they have to sell the house. But everybody has like memories attached to the house, so each of the siblings like doesn't want to sell the house or do anything because of it, and that's like what the whole book is about. And so maybe adding the fact that the house was haunted would have made it a little bit more palatable. Arliss has a question, which is, what are you guys' favorite novellas?
We're fantasy readers. That's
A book is
a novella if it's like 200 pages, right?
I mean, the one that comes to my head right now. What's wrong with me? Emperor Soul is pretty good. I don't think it was like groundbreaking like everybody says about Sanderson. It was good, but like everyone's like, oh my god, it's the best thing he's ever written. It's like, yeah, it was good. I mean, the like compendiums or whatever you want to call them that Rocchio writes, but I mean that's all sci-fi.
Those are good. Yeah.
But like I've enjoyed most of those. I don't really read a lot of novellas though, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ocean at the End of the Lane is considered a novel, but it's so short. I feel
it's definitely a novella. Yeah. So is Coraline. I reread that recently, and I was.
Well, I mean, Coraline's a kid's book, so I'm like, okay, but Ocean at the End of the Lane is for adults.
Is it like officially released as a kid's book though?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and that's fair.
And like again, I think this is.
Does that count as a novella?
That is a novella.
Even though they charge like $25 for
I just got a book that like I didn't know it would be so tiny when I ordered it. And when it arrived, I was like, where is the rest of the book? But like this is I did not know it would be nothing.
That is really short.
I only bring up Murderbot because I don't like Murderbot at all. So it's actually one of my least favorite novellas, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, yeah, and I think that also it's considered a novel, but it's really short. So I'm going to say
they certainly charge novel prices for those books. They are very short.
They are definitely considered novellas because the fifth one is the only novel, and that was how it was. Yeah. It was like it's finally in novel form, and then that was the worst one.
Gotcha.
So.
But speaking of both horror and novellas, even though I think this is considered a novel, but it's really short, so I'm saying it's a novella. Is What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher, which is a retelling of the Fall of the House of Usher, and like. I read that like in like Halloween time, and I had like 50 books on my TBR, all of which I hoped would be spooky, and I felt nothing for any of them. And I was like, am I just incapable of like feeling chilled or like alarmed? And then I read that and I was like, oh, this was kind of spooky.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think like Salem's Lot and Pet Sematary got some of that for me, but again, like I wasn't scared. They're not spooky books, but like King is very good at building tension. And then mixing in some like super weird effed up things. And Pet Sematary specifically got me because I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone's familiar with the premise, but like because I have kids, that's why
Stephen King says like that's the darkest thing he's ever written, because for him that's the darkest thing.
So like his intro to the book brought me to tears. The book itself did not. But like having
the book did bring me to tears, but not in like this is so sad. Like I mean, you've read it, but I won't say which part. But since you've read it, you'll probably know which part is like there's something that happens that's like really bad, but you don't actually see it happen. Like we kind of like skip over it. And then we have the main character recollect it. And when he's recollecting it, he kind of just says it so like abruptly and describes it like he doesn't like go on and on about it. He kind of just says it. And it's so horrifying that like, and I was driving and listening to the audio that is read by the Dexter actor.
Yeah.
And I just like, I was
Really
like
good.
driving and my eyes were like bugged out wide and there were like tears running down my face, but it was like tears of like shock. Like I can't deal with what I just heard.
That happened to me in Dark Age. I was driving and I hit that part.
Yeah.
And I was like,
That's a
well,
lot.
I guess I have nothing else to do but cry. Like, I don't know what else to do. It's the only way my body can react. The really horrible part.
Alex is kidding, I think.
I know he is. I know. No, he was there when I was reacting to it on Discord. He was like, I was like, chapter, whatever chapter it was. And he was
You were
"What
like
chapter is that?"
really into it, like, oh my god, I'm broken. I was like, keep going.
I think that was a different part. I don't know, but there's a couple really terrible parts of that.
I feel like the part in Dark Age that got me was the part that like got me because I wasn't prepared for it. Because like I knew Dark Age was going to be dark, so like all in the main characters, I'm like I have like I'm ready. I'm like I've built up preparation. Like bad things might happen. I'm ready for it. But like there's something that happens to a less main character that is really also shockingly horrifying. That just I was not preparing myself for that. So when it happens, I was just like, that is the part that like horrified me the most because I wasn't bracing for it.
Yeah, my wife is like that too. She will. I told her to read Sword of Kaigen because I really really like that book, but I also told her it made me cry a couple times. And then she finished the book, and she was sitting next to me reading the end, and she finished it. And she's like, "That was a really good book." And I was like, "You had no emotions while you were reading that." And she's like, "Well, you told me it was really sad, so I braced myself." And I was like, "That's just not how I work at all." Like, just knowing that something's sad, like if it's still appropriately sad, it's still gonna get me. But
because see, like that was me reading Jade Legacy because everyone, the entire internet was like, "Why finally?" So I finally read Jade Legacy, and I was like, "Okay, I was over prepared. Like, could have been worse, honestly. Like that was actually fine."
Yeah, I think it's a very specific scene that tends to get people, and I still think is a very powerful scene. But I don't think that ending is like that sad.
I actually thought she did a really good job of Jade Legacy. Honestly, I think the thing that she did the best, well, not one of the things she did best was just naturally carrying that story over, what was it, like decades in time inside the books. Like it was a long time passing and it actually felt organic and that she handled it correctly and not just like 10 years later, 20 years later, and everyone just acts exactly the same. Like I felt like she did that time passage really well.
Yeah, the only complaint I had was that like because so much time passes in Jade Legacy, I kind of wish it had been split into 2 books so we could like linger a little bit.
See
Because I
some
felt
of
like we
that.
would like skip ahead so much that I would be like, "Whoa, can we like hang out for a second?"
I know she said she always envisioned a trilogy, and like I guess I give her respect for not doing what Robert Jordan and George R. R. Martin and everybody else did, where they're like, actually it's 4 books, actually it's 5, actually it's 6, and like sticking to her initial plan. But it was one of those cases where I'm like, this could have been 4. For sure.
But also like if the assignment is this has to all fit in this book, like she like paced it as well as you possibly could if that's like the constraint. I just would have preferred a little more breathing room, but if it has to be 1 book, then that was like as good as it could be.
What is your guys' rankings of the book, if you had to say?
I think the first one's still my favorite just because like the reading experience for that one was like
most. You were just shocked you liked it. I remember you were just like, oh my god, I actually thought this was really good.
But also like it was the most like unputdownable for me out of all of them.
I remember loving all 3 of them and finishing that trilogy and being like, damn, like those were all excellent books. It's been almost 2 years now. Like I don't even remember which one would be my favorite. Right. Yeah. That for me is like the book, like most of the books are like erased from my brain now. I know I liked them, but I couldn't tell you specifics anymore.
So you guys, people that need to reread when like a book comes out in a series, like do you try to make sure you can binge them, or do you give yourself the confidence necessary to just continue onwards? Like Alex, did you reread Red Rising before Light Space Bringer?
So
well,
Light Space Bringer. Yeah, because we did a reread.
Yeah, in preparation
of Lightbringer coming out, which Liene never read.
I need to prepare myself over again. It's been too long.
By the time Angela, Liene, and I get together to read this or talk about it, it will have been well over a year since the book came out, and I've read it.
Listen,
I
it
will
took
not
me
read the
a
entire
year to
series
read
again.
Dark Age. I only read Dark Age like a year after it came out.
Yeah, so generally, no, I don't go back and reread entire series in anticipation for a new book. I'll watch reviews or like read about it, like refresh my brain on it, but I'm not going to go reread the entire series again.
I
For
did
most
reread all
books.
of
That's what I
Sunny
tend to do.
like before Ashes of Man came out, but I did reread Kingdoms of Death because like that was split in two, and
Yeah.
so like I did reread just that one, and I was glad that I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I before Disquiet Gods, I reread Empire of Silence, and I would have liked to have gotten a little bit further in that reread. But like even just like immersing myself in the beginning and the terminology and all that stuff, I was totally fine to go into Disquiet Gods. I think a lot of people panic ahead of time, and then like just reimmerse. Like what Alex does, I think is fine for most of the time. Where
Well, I think it depends on the author, because like authors, like you'll kind of know if you've read a few books from them if they're the kind of author that's going to give you some like a kind of a, not like an actual recap, but like is going to throw in some recapping information for you, versus authors that just will not do that, and so you just proceed accordingly.
Yeah, I really like the story so far at the beginning of books. I don't know why that hasn't always been a trend.
I mean,
it can be helpful.
It can be helpful as they're coming out, but like if you're binge reading a series,
you can just skip over that.
Yeah, I prefer that way more because the Wheel of Time books, I mean, lots of issues with them. But the thing that I really, one of the many things I really like, Alex, is just like every book, they're just recapping the last 9 books of stuff. So by the time you actually do
the recap gets longer and longer.
Yeah, so I'm just like, dude, just put it all at the beginning for us so we can skip it.
Yeah.
The prologue actually is usually where most of the events happen in some of these books.
Mm-hmm.
The prologue for Lord of
Some
Chaos
of them are 100 pages long.
was like 97 pages. I was like,
yeah,
that's not a prologue.
It's not.
It is not. I'm so glad you DNF that series, Liana, because it is not worth it. Actually, that's not true.
That was Knife of Dreams, right? I think that had like the stupidly long prologue. That might have been like the first one where it was like, this is literally 100 pages long.
Well, that's the 11th one. So Lord of Chaos had a very long one. It was like almost 100 pages. It was like 80 or 90. It took me a really long time to finish that prologue. I felt like I was in the prologue for an entire month.
I mean, you probably were. Crown of Swords had a really long one too, because it was basically just like the entire aftermath of Lord of Chaos. So
basically, we want every book to open with a Star Wars crawl.
Exactly. I have a love-hate relationship with Wheel of Time because I loved some of it so much, and so much of it was unreadable garbage.
Yeah, that was actually when I found your channels, when you were going through them. Like it was like a Dresden and a Wheel of Time review book, like basically every, like just rotating.
That's how you burned yourself out. That's why you quit.
No, what would have made me quit earlier was my initial plan, which was Malazan and Wheel of Time simultaneously. I would have died, which is why I did Dresden and Wheel of Time.
Did you ever start Malazan?
I read Gardens of the Moon like 2.5 years ago and really enjoyed it, and then just never continued. So I'll read it eventually, but I don't know when.
It's there, they're books.
It's there.
I don't know. I feel like it comes in waves where it's like everybody wants to read it and give it a shot, and then all those people DNF the series. Not all, but like a lot of them DNF the series, and then everybody else is like, "Oh, it's too scary and intimidating." I'm like, it's take it.
I feel like Malazan is something that people either absolutely love and praise as like the pinnacle of books, or they hate it.
And I am in the middle because you know what? I think the books are good.
Bold take.
They just don't make me want to, go live with a Sherpa in Tibet and ponder existence. Like, it's fine. They're good. There's dinosaurs with swords for hands. I gotta read that. That, I actually bought a hardcover like omnibus of all 4 books recently, and I'd never seen that before.
Yeah, I've never seen that before either.
And apparently it's like pretty rare. So some people were like,
"Oh, is it the one where it's like all of them have Severian on the cover, but it's like mostly just like him in black, kind of up close, with like his hair being all spiky in the front?"
Yeah, he has on like a mask.
He always has on a mask, but it's like the cover is like more prominently like just him, as opposed to like sort of a bigger setting. Because I feel like most of the other covers is more of like a whole landscape with Severian, as opposed to like just him.
This.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a pretty. OG cover.
Yeah, I like it. I think I'm gonna read from that edition when I get to it, and we'll see how it goes. I'm a little nervous. That's actually one that I am a little nervous.
Well, you can listen to the Alzabo Soup podcast while they do like an episode for like every chapter, so you can like listen as you go.
You know what? I'm doing that right now for A Song of Ice and Fire, and I don't know if I can do that for 2 series at once. Although it's very funny. I started it.
You might need to though for Book of the New Sun.
I started the podcast. I don't remember the name of it. One of the many recap podcasts, and they were. So I'm on like chapter 6 of the Game of Thrones, and they're talking about how George just announced Fire and Blood. And I'm like, holy crap, this is a long time ago. And they're still in like Storm of Swords on the new episodes, and I was like, man, this is.
I will say that as far as rereads are concerned, for the sake of buddy rereads, that got me to read all of A Song of Ice and Fire content again with Jimmy and Liene, which was a lot of fun. And rereading Red Rising was a lot of fun. But those live streams were fantastic to do. There's so much content. I don't know how many. Like 20 hours of YouTube.
With also lots of drinking.
Those were great though. Those were some
it's amazing we were coherent.
Content.
That was fun though.
There are multiple companion books talking about Book of the New Sun. There's a lexicon. There's like people do like dissertations on Book of the New Sun.
Yeah. I'm probably just gonna read it.
George showed up to our live show one night. It was great.
Did that happen there too? I saw that on the Alan podcast or Alan stream. I didn't see him do that on your guys' stream.
He was there. He made an appearance. It was fantastic.
Indeed.
Took a break from editing wildcards.
Something like that.
Do you guys think we're gonna get wins next year?
Never. I don't believe.
Every time someone says that, it gets pushed back another month.
Jimmy, do you believe? I need a believer in the chat.
For a second that we're ever gonna get that book.
We're so gonna get it. We will not get the last one.
We're never getting it.
Dude, if he died tomorrow, we would get it.
No, maybe Alex is trying to like reverse jinx it, because everyone is like hoping for it.
It's never gonna happen. It's never gonna live up to the 15 years of hype, even if it dropped tomorrow or however long.
It's more than 15 years, isn't it?
No, it's 12.
I don't know.
That's 12.
So 3 years from now.
It might be closing in on 13 now.
Okay. It was a longer gap then, right, between Feast for Crows and Dance of the Dragons, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that was like 6 years because Feast came out in 2005, and then Dance of the Dragons was July of 2011.
I'll say this: if he's not already done with it, we're never getting it. I'll put it that way.
What about Doors of Stone? Are we going to get that?
Well, that's never going to happen because
that's also never going to happen. So, but I'm not invested in Name of the Wind. So,
or the Thorn of Emberlane. Are we ever going to get that?
That actually is the one I think we'll get the most likely of.
Which one is that?
Gentleman
Scotland.
Bastards.
Has he said that he's going to do it?
Yeah.
Today is actually the 5-year anniversary of him posting the draft on Twitter. Somebody posted that in Reddit today. He has crippling social anxiety and all sorts of anxiety and stuff like that. He talked about it in a podcast once, and he was like, I actually have a bunch of stuff written. I just like freak out at the idea of showing anybody. So
yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah, apparently that happens. Like Evan Winter and his follow-up to Fires of Vengeance. Like,
I don't know what's going on with that at all.
He just, I don't know, went through some stuff and like didn't write Lord of Demons. And then I got an email, which I'm sure everybody did. It was just like, hey, but there's a special edition of Rage of Dragons on Kickstarter. I was like, I don't care. Where's the third book? It's been like 6 years. I don't even care anymore.
Like that cover, but I like the naked cover
so ugly
so much. Like with the original self-published cover on it. I really like that.
This is like these conversations always though when I like come back to that like old I think it's a blog post from Neil Gaiman where like someone asked Neil Gaiman if he thinks that like George R.R. Martin like owes his readers like the next book, and he at length basically just said George R.R. Martin is not your bitch.
I just got bookworm to read that essay like last week because I have PTSD from that essay. I've never reread it because I read it the first time. And that was actually the first time I ever heard of Neil Gaiman. Like I hadn't read any of his
amazing
books,
introduction to Neil Gaiman.
And I'm sure that I liked it. But then afterwards, for years, all I saw was like if anybody was like, maybe George should like hurry up a little bit with the book, maybe.
He's not your bitch.
Yeah, it would be like, he's not your bitch. And I'm like, okay, I just like have a visceral reaction to even just the words of it. But I mean, Neil's always impressive. So
Because he also says, I mean, because he's a Neil Gaiman, so he's like, in general, like the tone of it is very mild mannered and polite, except for him saying he's not your bitch.
You know, I was looking at his bibliography the other day because I wanted to complete his like bibliography of novels. Like, I'm not gonna read everything he's ever written because that's insane.
It would be all the comics and
yeah. And I've only not read Anansi Boys, but I looked, and he hasn't actually released a novel since 2013. And if you count that as a novella, it's been since 2008. And I'm like, dude, you're like George levels here.
But I mean, he also like writes for television a lot, and he's not writing in a series.
He's doing tons of stuff. Like I'm not saying he's lazy.
George.
But he's also not in the middle of a series that people are like waiting on the conclusion for.
He's been trying to write a sequel to American Gods and Neverwhere for like 20 years though.
Well, I mean, Anansi Boys is kind of a sequel to American Gods, but he has been writing a sequel for Neverwhere a long time.
Yeah, I think that's his next novel, he said. But who knows when we'll see it.
You've said so many heinous things, I don't even know which thing they're talking about.
Yeah, I don't know. Hey, he is
right. I remember when we were going to have me, you, Jimmy, and Alan read through Under the Northern Sky and talk about all the books.
Oh, look, there's the cuckoo, right? I just started rereading it today. That's actually not a joke.
And we got one book in, and everyone was just like, we'll pick this up sometime in the future, and just never happened.
Hey, the future is ongoing. It could,
Alex,
it could always happen.
Read the second one?
I read The Spider, yeah.
Yeah. I think you're the only one who read The Spider.
Yeah, I was.
I read The Wolf, and you know what? I really liked it, as some would say. Yes. And then me and Alex, tall guy, were buddy reading it, and he did. This is the exact thing he did. He started it, and then he finished it the next day. And then I just had no motivation to start it. I'm like, you already finished it.
I'll reread it with you.
Yeah, sounds good.
The Spider was good.
I do really want to get to it because I did like the Wolf quite a bit, and I like the world building and stuff. And I think the audiobook is really good, which is
I really like the big step. Actually, so The Cuckoo, I read it like this is my first time rereading it, and because I read it last year or 2 years, whenever I read it like right when it came out, and like it came out in England before it came out here, and I had pre-ordered like the hardcover from England, so I had it. But the audio wouldn't be available until it came out in the US, and I was interviewing him. And so then I was like, oh, well, I need to like read the physical copy. Then like I can't be waiting for the audiobook. So like I read it physically, and like that's the only one I read physically. And it's also the only one I'd never heard the audiobook for. So today I started listening to the audiobook for it for the first time. I was wondering if I would like feel differently. It's kind of brutal. So I also put off
like 10 times though, haven't you? 8.
And how many times have you read The Blade itself?
6, I think.
So which do you like more?
Oh, Sophie's choice.
I can't choose. Okay,
so if they were, let's say Joe Abercrombie and Leo Carew were going to collaborate, what aspects would you want each of them to...
I actually think that would be kind of terrible. Like, to be completely honest, like, I don't think they would work well together. Not because, like, I think they would be, like, nice to each other. Like, I don't think as people they couldn't get along, but their, like, approaches to writing and, like, what they're interested in, like, they're kind of really extremely different. So, yeah. Maybe I would actually, I don't know. It would either be perfect because they are interested in different things, and so then, like, they could, like, complement each other by bringing different strengths, or they would, like, drive each other crazy because, like, they're not on the same page at all. So, like, I don't know.
It's funny because like it's not like I have a strong disagreement, but I felt like just from reading The Wolf that they would probably work well together. But you've read it 8 times, you were a scholar, so
I think they would get along as people well, so they would work well together as like in an office, like if they shared a desk. But I don't think they would write well together.
I think Joe should collaborate with Brandon Sanderson because their different strengths are fundamentally different.
I was going to make the same joke, but you seem more serious than I am.
I don't think it would ever happen, or like I think Sanderson would melt at the kind of things that Joe would want to put in the novel. Like I don't think it would work. But if in a perfect world you could sit them down and you could just be like, Brandon, be okay with this, and you could be like, Joe, be okay with more magic and more explanations. It could be terrible or it could be brilliant.
I think they should, if they ever did write something together, I think they would have to do it where like I write one chapter, you write the next chapter, I write one chapter, you write the next chapter. We're not allowed to touch each other's work.
Nightmare. They really like each other, and like Sanderson made a comment when they were doing like a stream on Daniel's Green's channel that like he should have him out for Dragonsteel, and then this year for Dragonsteel they didn't announce any of the guests, and they're like, we have some big names, like some people that you might recognize, and I'm like, please, oh God, be Joe.
The only reason that I would ever go.
You wouldn't go to meet me in Bookborn and, you know, like hang out and read some Sanderson?
You other times. I don't have to go to that to meet you.
Yeah. Well, if Joe comes,
but like Joe never comes out to America when he has books come out. He only ever like tours in the UK.
To be clear, I don't actually think it will be Joe Abercrombie. I just think that would be amazing. I think it'll be like, you know, Brian McClellan.
I was at the Gunpowder Fantasy.
Yeah, Alan's favorite author. So, Alex, why do you hate Ender's Game?
Because it sucks.
I know, but let's get more specific. I hated that book, and everybody gaslit me and acting like it was the best thing ever written.
I've never actually read Orson Scott Card. Isn't there some controversy about like him, like not Ender's Game, but like the author, like in real life?
Oh yeah, for sure. He's a garbage person.
Garbage man.
He is a radical, anti-gay religious person.
Oh, that was it. That sounds. Right.
But yeah, so Ender's Game. There are infinitely better science fiction novels that have been written before and since that dunked.
You sure? I've heard people say it's the greatest ever written.
I've heard that too, Liene.
It wasn't you that said that. It must have been someone else.
No, there is a lot of weirdly homoerotic scenes with children in that book, specifically a shower scene that made me uncomfortable, especially coming from Orson Scott Card.
You're misreading it because he hates gay people. So that
exactly. The entire
it's weirdly how often those two things.
Right? The entire premise of children being super geniuses and being like the pinnacle of society to actually get us through this war with.
Why do you hate children? Is my question.
Like,
Alex.
I didn't buy the plot. I hated the writing. The Ender Wiggin is just an annoying character. I didn't think it was enjoyable. The whole battle school setting was just like,
I agree with all this. Thank you for validating.
I just don't care. I read through it and I was just like, I literally multiple times reading it, I was like, this is what you all are so excited about?
See, this is what we use Goodreads for, is if I finished Ender's Game, then I would go and look for that 1-star review from Alex to validate me and be like, yes!
There was so much that I was just like, why is this the book that you guys are praising as like the pinnacle of sci-fi?
People talk about like the strategy in it and like, oh, like it's so. I'm like, it literally doesn't tell you.
Playing
like,
a video game.
It's like, oh, he sits down and then he like super smashes all the bad guys, and then like they play like team sports, and he's like, he won all of the team sports. It's like in like Ted Lasso when like they're like, oh, we're winning this season, but they just skipped all the games, and you're like, wow, they're like really good now, and it's like, but we didn't see any of that. Nobody's gonna watch Ted Lasso and be like, wow, it really tells you how to play soccer. Like it just doesn't.
And I thought the whole like for
validation, Sal.
If I was 13 when I read it, I probably would have thought it was amazing, like every other 13-year-old boy did. What I don't understand is when middle-aged men praise that book as if it's still some kind of like groundbreaking science fiction piece of, I don't even know. It's just the whole side plot with his sister or brother, like his other siblings, and like creating internet blogs or whatever the fuck they were doing. I was just like, this is so dumb.
There's a part in chapter 2 or 3 where like his brother is trying to bully him, and Ender is 6, and he's like, stop. I actually wrote a note detailing that you've been abusing me, and it's in a locker, and if something happens to me, people are going to know that you did this to me, and I know that you really want to be a politician, and that is going to ruin your career. So if you have a brother that suspiciously dies, and I'm like, you are 6 years old. This is ridiculous. And I was like, this book is stupid. That was what I knew for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. It's like when an author creates that one character that, like, Michael Crichton did this a lot in his books, like absolutely did it in Jurassic Park, where you create a character where it's like, this character is just going to be me. I'm just going to put all of my thoughts through this person. Orson Scott Card did that, but with children. It's just like none of it worked. And then people were like, read Ender's Shadow. It's so good too. I was like, okay, what's different? It's basically the same story. You follow Bean. He's 4 years old instead of 6. And like 12 pages in, there were like child hookers on the street. And I was just like, I'm not reading this. And I threw the book.
That's crazy. That's
Right?
insane.
Yeah.
See, people told me to read Speaker of the Dead. They're like, oh, you'd like Speaker of the Dead more. I'm like, unfortunately, I'm not going to give Orson Scott Card my money. And I just happened to find like a 99-cent copy used of Ender's Game. So that'll probably never happen.
Yeah, it was garbage. And I got a couple, it might have been a chapter. I forget. It was very early in the book where it was like literally this 4-year-old is going to kill somebody. And there were like children hookers walking the streets. And I was just like, what is this? What, like, this is your sci-fi future? Okay, I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jimmy.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna highlight that comment, but good job, Jimmy.
Do it.
Yeah.
Do it. Yeah, it was his favorite.
We're all going to hell. We're all going to hell.
Yeah.
Are we the ones going to hell? Are you sure?
Well, other people will be there, but
He'll be there first. He'll open the door.
Yeah. Speaking of like, problematic authors, I really like Hyperion, and I really didn't like Fall of Hyperion, and I recently got the next two.
I also didn't like Hyperion that much the second time I read it. I was like, actually, maybe it's not amazing.
Well, I was surprised you liked it the first time.
I think, what I really liked the first time, and I still think deserves credit, is that because it's told by like different people, and it does authentically feel like different authorial voices telling their stories. So like from like a writing craft perspective, like that was really impressive to me, the way he could like tell it as different authors telling it, so I think that's really cool and really good. But yeah.
Is Dan Simmons controversial?
Yes. Not as controversial as Orson Scott Card. But he's still a problematic figure in some spheres. But
I'll Google it. I don't know.
I don't know how far I want to get into it here. It's not quite as far as Orson Scott Card, but he's he has some rants about Islam and other subjects.
Mm.
And apparently, there's the series where it's like the Olympus series or something, where it's like Troy in space. Apparently, his Islamophobia is quite noticeable in that series, but I haven't read it.
Gotcha.
I just have heard that that's when his like political views really come into the sphere. Poet's Tale is very divisive, I find. See, I liked the Poet's Tale. What I really didn't like was the Soldier's Tale.
Word.
For probably the same.
I also, and this gets way worse in the second one, which is why the second one is way worse. The obsession with Keats.
Oh my God.
What? Why? Literally why? So,
Dan Simmons clearly loves the poet John Keats, and everybody references John Keats in the first.
Not just references, but like it's like integral to the plot. It's so stupid.
And then the second book has someone who thinks they literally are John Keats, and that's all I'll say for like spoiler reasons. But like, so it's just nuts. I'm just like, dude, what? And I will never read any John Keats. Like I just have PTSD of hearing that name and people talking.
It's just like you can like what you like, and like because it's your book, then you're like, well, why not Keats? Like, but like the entire premise of what's going on, like even if you picked a different poet, like I don't care. Like the thing you're doing here is literally just like constructing your sci-fi around your like manic desire to shove John Keats in here for no reason. Like, why is this here?
I don't know if this is true. I believe you're probably.
But even if that is true, then way to be obvious about it. Wouldn't you like to have some, like, if I was like writing something in response to something, I wouldn't just like, if I was writing a response to like The Tempest by William Shakespeare, I wouldn't make Shakespeare a character in it because like that's really dumb.
Yeah, like The Dark Tower is all based on a poem line. It's like a 7-book series that was inspired by that.
Dark Tower, like Roland
came or something. Roland came.
Roland came, yeah.
And there's no like crazy shit about that. Black Leopard Red Wolf. I really want to read that. I don't know if I'll.
That's been a joke in my Patreon for so long because it's like constantly on the poll and it'll come close to winning, but it never wins.
I've owned that book for probably 3 years and I've never started it.
It is like the fourth or fifth oldest book on my Kindle. Like if I scroll all the way down to when I first got a Kindle, I got it, and I just never picked it up. And now I hear about it, and I'm like, I'm either gonna hate this or love this. So I don't know.
I mean, everyone always talks about how brutal it is, and I'm just like, that doesn't sound
Because
like
everyone says it's like trigger warning the book. It's just like
Yeah.
absolutely brutal, like inhumane things constantly is like what it seems like it is. I don't know. Maybe I'll read it at some point, but
I haven't, but
Owning it is the first step. I actually just bought a physical copy not that long
I've
ago,
owned it
too.
for ever since it's been on the poll. I've owned a copy the entire time. I've been ready to go.
A long time.
Is there another book on the poll that like never wins but always almost makes it?
No, it's mostly that one.
So it'll be Bookborn's favorite, I see.
That is always, I mean, like children and animals, like is always the most brutal.
I just like, I've been curious this whole stream. Why do you have 4 copies of Dark Age?
Don't worry about it. I also have more than 4.
But what 3 of them look the same?
They're not the same, actually.
I know that. That's why I want to know. One's the paperback, and then you know what?
None of them are the paperback. Actually, I also have the paperback. That's not one of these.
You are a hoarder.
They're all different, okay?
He has a box labeled Dark Age alternatives.
But why are they different?
Like, there's the Goldsboro edition, the Waterstones edition, the Barnes & Noble edition, and the edition that was personalized to me at the, like, launch for it.
Okay, that's fair.
Thank you.
Is that at least your favorite one in the series?
No, Golden Sun is my favorite. But I do think Dark Age is the best one, like quality of writing wise. But I think the Golden Sun is just like the most enjoyable to read.
It is really fun.
I think
Dark Age is
not
amazing.
fun to read.
It is not fun to read.
Yeah.
Dark Age, I think, so I was like, Dark Age is like the best thing he's written. I mean, maybe
I'm
like
curious if Lightbringer will be your favorite because it's my favorite. But
possible.
previously my favorite was Golden Sun.
Well, that's one of my favorite things about like Pierce Brown is like that, and this isn't only true for him, but like watching an author actually want to try to get better and to try to like expand their horizons and try to improve things that they think could be better and not just like rest on their laurels and like phone it in. Like it's very clear to me that even if he like misses the mark still sometimes, like that he wants to like test himself and test his limits and try to be a better writer and try to like instead of just like some authors will also, even if they recognize a weakness, then they'll just avoid that. But instead, he'll like try to like revisit things that he wasn't that good at before to make them better.
I think that's fair. I don't know too much about his because I only got into his series last year, so I've seen like one interview with him ever. So I'm just like,
well, he was like 20. He was like 22, 23 when he wrote Red Rising, and he wrote it like for himself. Like Rage wrote it because he was kind of like. Was like, I'm never gonna be a writer, I'm never gonna be anything, and just kind of like wrote that, and like of course that's what sells. And then after that he was like, oh fuck, like I gotta like write a series now, like properly. So I feel like there's like a big difference between Red Rising and Golden Sun, because one was him just being this is for me, and then he was like, oh, author now, I have to like craft a world. So and then
it's funny because a lot of people take like the sophomore slump in like music or books or whatever, and they're not as good, and then that's when he just started taking it seriously. So
it was like a night and day difference. Golden Sun is just so much better than Red Rising. Like going back and rereading it, Red Rising holds up better for me now but I think I appreciate it like because I love the rest of the series so much.
I agree.
That I almost forgive all the like goofy shit he does in that book. And
I also because I know the
characters
from later books, then like when I see them in Red Rising, like I already know them. So like
I think I know the answers for you guys, but just to see if I'm right. Which one do you guys like more, Sun Eater or Red Rising? I know they're.
What do you think our answers are? You have to tell us that.
Okay, well, I think Liene likes Red Rising more. Alex, I'm a little bit more unsure. Plays his cards a little bit closer to his chest. Doesn't have 17 copies of Dark Age behind him.
He doesn't have 17 copies of Sun Eater behind him either.
That's why he plays his cards close to his chest.
He only likes dogs.
I'm going to say he likes Sun Eater better.
I'd say there was a point in time where that potentially was true, but I think Red Rising still wins for me. I like them both for very different reasons.
Me too. Yeah.
They are incredibly good at different things. I don't know, they're very different. Their writing style is different. Their take on action and characters are different. I think Red Rising is infinitely more rereadable for me just because of the pacing, and I love the amount of action that's in it. And Pierce Brown loves plot twists and
I also think he
backstabs
writes
and
action much better.
yeah.
I
I
think
don't
Pierce Brown writes characters much better also because like in Sun Eater, it's
Yes,
just
me too.
Adrian.
Yeah.
Like
I think
nobody
that's the
else.
worst thing about Sun Eater is like I wouldn't call it bad character writing by any means, but like
Yeah.
you have Hadrian and you have like everybody else.
Well,
like,
part of it is
Lady.
also just the fact that like in Sun Eater, Hadrian is alone and like aging
Mhm.
and going places by himself so much, where so you
Yeah.
don't even have the opportunity to kind of develop this like attachment to a whole crew.
I feel
And
like
in
that's
Red
a
Rising,
cop-out,
Darrow
because
has a
there's
lot
quite
more
a few
people.
characters that recur and they're around him quite
But
a
they're
bit.
not like around that much. There's no like like buddy cop like thing like with Severo. There's like okay,
So-
Valka, but like
I could say it this way,
Switch.
Kyle. When Liene and I read and talked about Kingdom of Death, the entire sequence where I'll just say a bunch of people get murdered, I'm pretty sure both of us were just like, who? I don't care about them. Is Hadrian?
Well,
okay, we're good. Like, carry
you
on.
You guys need to get better at knowing characters then. But no, I get what you mean. If something similar happened in a Pierce Brown book, it would feel very different.
Probably, but I think there's a bunch of, because Pierce Brown has done that too, where like he'll kill tertiary characters, or like they'll be howlers, but they're like the ones that aren't in it as much, and I'm like, oh, all right, anyway. But like there are certain characters where if they ever die, like I'll just fight Pierce Brown. So,
but also
there's
like
that.
I think with someone like Switch, like I agree, like that name has come up a lot, but like I don't feel like I could tell you anything like about that character, like, oh, that's such a Switch thing to do.
Yes, but that's
or, like,
that's why I'm saying that like it's a weakness of Rocchio's because he's there.
Yeah.
He could be.
But I
doing
do
that better.
think like, but I think he shows that he's capable of it with Hadrian.
wasn't
And
there
in
for
some
that
of the
long. That's the
some of the novellas, like I think he does a good job with Crispin in the novellas. It just feels like he doesn't care to do that with like any character besides Hadrian. Whereas I think Pierce Brown has more like pays more attention to the other characters and like wants you to care about
it's
them
his
as well.
story. It's like,
Yeah, for sure.
like Red Rising is very much Darrow's story, but like
I thought you meant it's Christopher Rocchio's story. I thought you were like one of those commenters that's like, actually, the author gets to decide how they want to write it, and you're wrong. I was like, excuse me?
Yeah. Oh God. Those kinds of comments.
So Sal, I would encourage anybody who doesn't like Red Rising to read the next one. At least give it like 10, 20%, see what you feel.
Yeah.
The exception would be like if you're just like, this is too fast paced for me or something, then I'd be like, I mean, maybe not.
Yeah.
But for most people, if you don't like Red Rising, I just think that book has a lot more flaws than the next two.
Yeah.
Oh, it didn't.
So
I mean, I liked Red Rising well enough, but like I
gave
wasn't
it
like, this is
3.5.
my favorite series.
Yeah, I felt
until
like I
read
hated
Golden
it.
Sun, and I was like,
If
oh,
you really
this is amazing.
like, if you hate Darrow as a character, maybe not. But
or if you hate Pierce Brown,
I disliked Darrow in the first book.
But I think if you
Sure.
hate Pierce Brown's authorial voice, also, then like
that's true. Like the tense of it. Like, there's definitely reasons that I would tell people to not try the second book. But generally speaking, a lot of people bounce off the first one because it's just like not as well written and kind of has some edge to it.
Like I feel like as soon as someone learns that he was a 23-year-old man that Rage wrote this for himself, you're like, this book makes perfect sense.
Speaking of books inspired by Rome, though, and also Arliss's question, I just started buddy reading. Well, I haven't actually started, but I have the book next to me, so I will start it tonight. Is The Will of the Many by James Islington, which everybody's been saying is.
Is it Islington or Islington? I have
no idea. The problem is everybody says that exact same sentence. So they say, is it Islington or Islington? And then I hear both, and then I don't know. If people just stuck to one, I would say it wrong.
I'm
with
pretty certain it's supposed to be Islington.
But then in Britain, Islington, the place, is called Islington.
Is he British?
I don't know.
He is
Then
British.
it's Islington.
Or no, he's Australian.
Yeah.
He's Australian.
Oh.
Jimmy with the save, because I know he's gotten yelled at about it by random commenters. So it's Islington.
So because Jimmy said it, it's wrong. So everyone say Islington, right?
But maybe
I
it's
just know,
been
like
burned into his psyche.
in Neverwhere, like there's the Angel of Islington, and like that's how it's pronounced, the Angel of Islington.
Maybe Neil Gaiman says it differently. Then
yes,
Just Neil, only Neil.
Every book. His technical writing improves every single book. He gets much better at storytelling. He is much better at.
Well, also, like, he was
Yeah.
like kind of complaining about how much harder it is to write the new books because there's multiple perspectives, and he is like notoriously a pantser, and you can't really totally pants it when you have multiple perspectives that need to be like converging. So he like actually has to like kind of plan this out, and he's like, people have asked him like, oh, when are we gonna get like a world of or like an appendix kind of like thing, and he's like, well, like, to do that, I would have to like give that information to somebody to put that together, and that information lives on sticky notes and in my head, so not gonna happen.
The worst thing George R. R. Martin has ever said is he said in an interview like 2 years ago that he keeps all of his stuff in his head. I'm like, you son of a bitch, you need to write that shit down. Like, someone just stick him in a chair and just write it down.
He's gonna get too old. He's gonna forget.
Yeah, like, legitimately, write it down somewhere. This is ridiculous. I haven't been reading a lot of historical fiction lately, Sal. I've been back in the fantasy sphere. Actually, that's not true. I finished a historical fiction book yesterday, but it was okay.
But since yesterday.
I read The Wolf of Wessex, which is just Red Country. Actually, I was going to tell you about this, Liana. It's by Matthew
You had
Harvey.
me at Wolf.
Well, it's not about wolves. It's The Wolf of Wessex, and it's literally Red Country without any fantasy elements, like almost beat by.
I mean, arguably, Red Country is already Red Country without any fantasy elements. So,
I couldn't believe, like, it's like, you know, there's this older grizzled veteran that used to be like a crazy berserker, and he wants to just settle down on a farm and live his life. And there's this girl, and her family member is killed, so he has to like, avenge her.
It's very possible, because did you know like what mostly inspired Red Country?
The Last Kingdom.
Unforgiven or Forgiven, something like that.
Yeah, Unforgiven with Clint Eastwood. And
yeah,
like that is
the
plot of Unforgiven.
They,
so like
they must have the same protogenesis, yeah, for sure. But yeah, I don't recommend somebody who loves Abercrombie to read it, but I couldn't believe how similar it was. I was like, holy crap.
I couldn't believe when I was watching Unforgiven, I was like, well, this is terrible. But also, like, so like, well done, Joe Abercrombie, for making it better. But there was like one particular thing, because I obviously am familiar with Red Country, and there's like a particular thing that happens in Red Country towards the end. And so during Unforgiven, like, there's like a similar setup for this particular, like, that would make you think this thing is also going to happen. And I was like, I know this inspired it. And so then the movie seemed like it was ending, but I was like, but I know it's not ending, because that thing, oh, the credits are rolling. What? Excuse me? Like, you just left that hanging. You're not going to do anything with it. And I was like, Joe must have watched this and been like, but that was unresolved. We never did anything with that. I'll fix it.
Or he just was like, no, this fits my sensibilities, but he just wrote something different anyway. Have either of you read Pillars of the Earth?
I've seen the adaptation of it, and I've read other Ken Follett books, and they're all the same. So basically, yes.
You would not like Pillars of the Earth, I don't think, but Alex might. It's very good. It has a lot.
I thought that was all you were gonna say. I was like, I think I like it because it was good.
No. It's
the reason Liana will dislike it and Alex will like it is because it is good.
I don't think Alan would say.
But he would say it more.
I just think the thing that bothered me will also bother Alex, but then we would like the rest of it. Whereas I think the thing that bothered me would bother Liana much, much more, which is that, man, Ken Follett really likes to just have a woman be sexually.
But again, like, the plot is almost the same in all the stories, because like I've seen the adaptations of Pillars of the Earth and World Without End, and then I've
heard the sequel,
and I've read Evening in the Morning, and having seen those stories and read Evening in the Morning, I'm like, these all have the same DNA with like different, like, they changed the dressing, like, but it's basically the same story.
To be fair, Kyle, like, probably wouldn't stop the book because of it, but by the second or third time, I'd be like, really? Again?
I was like, well, especially because like it's like front loaded in like the first half. I feel like he's just extra doing it. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna hate this. Yeah. I'm gonna give it like a solid go. And then like the second half, I'm just like, is this book really good in spite of all this? But it is one of the. I'm really surprised people didn't pitch me on it earlier, because it's like the time period of Game of Thrones, like that's it. Like, I mean, the War of the Roses takes place like a couple
Game
years
of Thrones
later.
is not.
I know, Liana. I know. Shut up. And but then it has like the pacing of like the Last Kingdom series.
Okay.
and like the world building of like a Stephen King, like Salem's Lot or something, where it's like you learn about the whole town and all of the people in it and their lives. And I was like,
Well, I
those are
think
three
I
of the
would have
things I love.
enjoyed. I think I would have enjoyed the evening and the morning more if I wasn't the whole time going like, so this is like Pillars of the Earth. So this is like World Without End. I know what's going to happen because it's exactly.
And that's why I
like
haven't read any of them yet.
this.
I'm gonna give them space after each one.
Your main critique, though, I read this book, Sealed Empire, last year. That was like a indie author that sent that to a bunch of people.
I remember the
And
cover.
it was like a blend of like futuristic sci-fi with medieval fantasy, and I won't explain why. But every time medieval fantasy world was happening, it was like bad man sexually assaulting somebody. I'm just like, give them something else to do.
It was like Westworld, but fantasy world.
Kind of, but it was just like, it was like, this guy's evil. He's the bad guy. Do you know why? Because he sexually assaults people. I was like, every time he came up was just like him doing it again. I was like, literally do something else. Make him do anything else. There's more evil things that you could do as a character and make you interesting instead of just doing that again. It was just,
Yeah, it's very lazy.
yeah, it was.
If I was to recommend historical fiction to Alex and Liene, which one would you give them? Alex, I only know historical fiction that you've read that was like The Last Kingdom. Have you read anything else?
I own a bunch. I don't think I've read a whole lot else yet. No.
I'd probably recommend the same one to both of you, which is Wolf of the Plains by Conor Golden, which is like a retelling of the Mongol Empire, but it starts, the first book is different than the other ones because it's just Chinggis Khan when he was, a child, and his name was Temujin. And most people don't know that part of the story, and it's just extremely interesting, which is that like when he was 10 years old or 11 years old or something like that, his father was killed, and then his whole family was just cast out into the desert to die. And just like it was him and like his 3 brothers and a sister, like all children, and then his mom. And him and his brother just like feasted off the land and like stole and stuff and like got them to live. And then just through slowly doing that over time, he got more and more powerful. And then he just like took over all the tribes. I was like, that's crazy. Like that's an insane story. I think that's really
historical fiction, isn't it? Liene, isn't it? The Wolf, isn't that historical fiction, or is it now?
Oh, I mean, it's like alternate history because like the premise is that what if other humanoid species had survived and like shared our planet with us?
Okay, so kind of.
Yeah, so it's not so when people think it's fantasy and I'm like, well, I mean, it's fantasy in terms of being like a speculative concept because like this didn't happen, but there's no magic.
Gotcha.
Chinggis Khan in the Making of the Modern World is not nearly as good as the Conor Golden books, so no, Sal.
Have you started reading The Half-Drowned King?
No, and I probably won't soon, but I do want to read it. The Wolf of
the audiobook is also really good.
Oh, that's good. I'll see if maybe one of my libraries has it. Yeah, I just saw the cover and I was like, I know somebody told me that the cover of this book, like I was like, they liked it, and I was like, oh yeah. What was the name of the series for people who are listening? I forget the name of the series.
Oh, for the Half-Drowned King, it's the Golden Wolf Saga by Linnea Hartsucker. So it's supposed to be like the saga of King Harold Minehair, which she's kind of like told as like, because the sagas aren't, they're not written as like novels. So it's like taking the events of the saga and kind of like fleshing them out and like humanizing them and like, what would that actually like look like the people that were there and like when these like events would have become sagas.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Like, I mean, I took like a history of the Icelandic age in school. And so I learned a bunch of like the overview of all that stuff. And then I bought a bunch of historical fiction that like vaguely deals with the time. And I've read almost none of it. So.
Well, now you have one more.
Yeah. Wolf of the Plains. Yeah, sorry, Arliss. That's what I said. No, I love that series. That's like probably my favorite historical fiction series that's not written by Bernard Cornwell. I think it's really good.
The Lost Kingdom is excellent. I need to get back to it.
How many did you read? Ish?
2, 3. I want to say the first 3.
Yeah.
But that was also another series that I just binged like crazy.
Yeah, read the next 3 and then take a really long break.
Uh-oh.
No, I think they're all good. They get repetitive, and like the first 6 are like the first arc of the series, I would say. Yeah. And like the 6th one is actually my favorite. I feel like most of the big events for the first half of the series happen in that one. And then 7 through 9 are like so repetitive that like I actually struggle to remember which one's which. And then like 10 is good. Didn't like 11 at all. And then like 12 is really good. So, or I think there's 13. So like, see, I don't even know. Like the end is very murky, but the last one's really good.
So is the latter half of the series as goofy as the latter half of the show?
No, because he still keeps internal consistency and basic competency and isn't a moron.
The bar is really high.
Well, I know they
So
butchered
Danny
your favorite character.
Forgot about the Iron Fleet.
Oh man, I have been slowly telling Bookborn what happens in the show.
Oh god.
Because I figure if I tell her all at once, it will kill her.
Or she'll just burst out laughing.
No, closer to killing her, to be honest, because I told her some of the stuff about Jamie and Brienne, and she was very upset. And then I told her what happens with Stannis and just some other fun little things. And she was like, "Why did people do this to us?" And I'm like, "I don't know." So my theory is that D&D did not actually read Feast and Dance. They had like Brian Cogman read them and then just like give them the cliff notes, because they just miss all of the actual stuff that happens in those books and do whatever the hell they want anyway. And then I told Bookborn that, and she was like, "That can't be true." And then as I told her more and more things after she read, she's like, "I see what you're saying."
Yeah. I mean, it's the same guys that were just like, "Gotta have a fucking zombie dragon." Like,
they wanted a zombie bear or a zombie polar bear. They're like, "We gotta get a zombie polar bear." That's like literally what they said in an interview.
That's what it was. It was the zombie bear when he was just like, "You can't not do that." Like, you don't have to.
I had no problems with the zombie bear, except that episode was stupid. But it's more just like how little they used it. Like it was literally just one time to be like, "Look, a zombie bear."
Yeah.
Liana, are you gonna watch season 3 of Wheel of Time or season 2 of Rings of Power?
Yes.
Because
she loves her
content is good.
Yeah.
Because content is good.
It helps the algorithm.
Listen, your Rings of Power reviews were like what got me through that show, because they were incredibly funny.
Honestly, I think it's more entertaining to watch Rings of Power and make fun of it than Wheel of Time, because Wheel of Time is like just ever so teensy slightly a little bit better than Rings of Power. Yeah. And like, so it's not any more enjoyable to watch it, but like you can't fully make fun of it the way you can with Rings of Power because it's not fully ridiculous. Like it's quite ridiculous a lot of the time. But like with Rings of Power, like I was like laughing while watching it, not just like, you know, making jokes after. Whereas Wheel of Time, I'm just like, I'm just so bored. Like I will make jokes of this because this is stupid. But
like Rings of Power is like funny bad, where Wheel of Time was just like incompetent.
I mean, Rings of Power gave us the C is always right, which is just comedy gold. Like that never gets old.
Wheel of Time is just like dumb bad, where I'm just like, what? None of this makes sense. This all looks
well,
bad.
It's also, I think it's because like Wheel of Time does have the books kind of underpinning something there. So there's like kind of a plot that they're kind of going along. Rings of Power is just nonsense. Tolkien like there's just nothing holding this together at all except vibes. And the vibes aren't great. So
yeah. I think with Wheel of Time, like a lot of people, when they didn't like it, they just assume it's because you're like a book fan. I was like, I don't give a crap about these books. As Alex would say, I didn't even finish them. But what I do care about is like a story that's not stupid. I didn't just skip 3.
What'd you skip?
6.
Jesus Christ. I thought you only skipped 3.
No, but I went back. I'm reading Lords of Chaos before bed right now, and it's fine.
To put you to sleep.
Yeah, but that's just because it's Michael Kramer, not because of the book.
Oh my god!
I hate Michael Kramer.
So
the funny thing is that Kate Redding is also not one of my favorite narrators.
She's better than Michael.
Yeah, when I'm like listening before bed,
yes, she is.
Anything with Kate Redding, I'll like actually like stay up and listen to a little bit, and then as soon as if it's like a Kate Redding chapter, I'll listen to like the whole thing basically, and then as soon as it gets to Michael Kramer, I'll fall asleep.
They just need to stop having old men narrate these books.
It's just Michael Kramer sounds like he's not interested in what he's reading, and that is contagious. It is infectious, and now I too am not interested.
So I don't remember the guy's name, but if you ever listen to The Inheritance Cycle, the narrator is the funniest thing ever, because when he does Saphira's voice, it's just like, "Old man, what do you think a dragon sounds like?" And then he just talks like this. I was just like, "All right, Cookie Monster, settle down."
Oh man, sometimes like just I feel that way with Simon Vance, who I really like as like the narration voice, like just like the voice of the narration. And some of his characters are fine, but he has an old man voice that like it reminds me of like a child trying to act like an adult. Oh, you go, and like it just sounds so caricatured, and he does it for every single old man that I just can't take any of the old men.
And then there's
seriously.
the Song of Ice and Fire audiobooks.
Don't upset.
I'm
me.
sorry, I think it's the Song of Fire and Ice. Is that?
Does he actually say that one time?
He actually says that,
Oh
and no
my
one
God.
did a second take on that. They just let him say Song of Fire and Ice.
How can people defend this man? I know it's crazy.
Okay. I mean, we got all the correct words in there, not the right order, but they're all there.
You know, there's like a lot of people, like I know Jimmy's one of them, Scott, the bald booktuber, who like they just like listen to it enough that it's like, you know, calming, comforting, power to you. But the people who are like, no, he's actually an excellent narrator, and then you're like, okay, well, what about the fact that he never said any of the names right? And like, it's a lot of names. Like
And that
just hand
all
wave.
the
I'm
women
like,
sound
no.
like old hags in the forest,
I'm like,
regardless of age or circumstance.
it's super basic to just know the name.
That man reading Daenerys
Yes.
Targaryen is just like
I did Dance with Dragons on my reread with David Reed's A Song of Ice and Fire, and I actually liked it quite a bit, except that guy Stannis is atrocious, but I'll accept that
But
as
the
a
Feast for
trade-off.
Crows has a second audiobook that's narrated by
John Lee.
yeah, and that's
Yeah.
he should have done them all.
Yeah, I like John Lee quite a bit. I actually I listened to Ember Blade. I feel like that's the name of this book, which is like, you know, a pretty good book. But the narrator for that, his name was Simon Bibb, I think, and he's my new favorite to listen to do A Song of Ice and Fire. He's not big enough for them to ever actually do it, but if I got to choose, he'd be my favorite because he has the like vaguely older British feeling, but like clean, and he does a lot of voices without them being like.
I actually
Over
think
the
the
top.
narrator for The Wolf would be good for A Song of Ice and Fire.
I
for
also
the
think
same
he would be
reason.
really good too, and Ben Allen. Like I honestly think they should just go with multiple POVs, or sorry, multiple
narrators. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or at least one man and one woman, so that the female chapters could have like a female narrator.
so
or something.
Michael Kramer and Kate Redding.
Oh, anything but that. We can stick with Roy. It's fine.
Yeah, I would just keep Roy. They're doing like a Harry Potter full cast. I know Harry Potter is like technically like a bigger series and stuff. Like it's sold more. And I'm like, okay, if you're doing it for that, could we pretty please get one for A Song of Ice and Fire? What is the name of the audiobook narrator for The Wolf? Is it Matt Addis?
I was just
Matt
looking.
Addis.
Is that the name? I don't actually.
Yeah, Matt Addis.
Okay.
Oh, he's looking at it. Okay. No, yeah, he's really good. I like him a lot. I don't know anything else he narrates though.
Me either.
Yeah, me neither.
Hmm.
To me, like his voice, it's kind of like with Stephen Pacey. I'm just like, this voice just like is this story. But I think unlike Stephen Pacey, which is like so distinct, I feel like this guy, like, I mean, to me, he is like the voice of like the wolf, but also like what you were saying about the other narrator that like he does, you know, voices, but not too much. He just has this kind of like this like Britishness that sounds kind of stoic that like would just kind of like suit the majority of what you're reading in those books.
Yeah, that's exactly why I like Simon Bibb, because like a lot of people say Stephen Pacey or Jonathan Keeble, and I like both of them a lot, but I associate them so much with what I've already read them with that I need somebody that's like more.
You need the Gary Oldman of narrators, where they just kind of
Yes.
blend into.
You know what book you would really like, Alex, and I have no idea if you would like, Liena, is Dungeon Crawler Carl.
Dungeon Crawler Carl?
Yeah, you're saying that like you haven't heard of it. You haven't heard of it?
No.
Wow, you have been off BookTube, my friend. Holy crap. It's extremely popular. It's by Matt Dinneman. It was a self-published lit RPG book. It's like 6 books in now. And it got really, really popular in the self-pub sphere. And then now, like, he's gotten a distribution deal for just the physical books, which I think is the sweetest deal maybe a self-pub author could get, is that he retains all the rights for the audio and ebook. He just gets his books in stores now, which is pretty sweet. But the audiobooks are amazing, like the best audiobooks I've ever listened to, just in terms of like the sheer competence of the, like, I mean, Stephen Pacey's number 2, but I can't even believe Jeff Hayes is the only narrator. Like,
yeah.
He's doing like a cat voice and a
So
bunch
we're
of women.
starting a war?
So
Listen.
I understand that like lit RPGs are like, I understand the concept of it, but like, how do they actually read?
So
Like,
I've
is
only
it-
read this one.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure I don't like the genre. But I just like Dungeon Crawler
The
Carl.
ringing endorsement.
No, but that is a ringing endorsement because I think Dungeon Crawler Carl is pretty light on the lit RPG aspects, and it's so fun and like has decent world building and it's just a blast that it makes me forgive it. But the basic premise of that is that Earth is destroyed and he wakes up and like all the remaining humans are in like a dungeon crawl and like there's all these like alien spectators that are like voting on which humans are going to get through it. And then other than that, it reads like a video game. So like,
and we just like replay Kyle being like, it's just so fun. It's just such a good time. So basically all of humanity is destroyed and aliens are watching. I'm just like, oh, so fun.
So is it basically like the book form of like a D&D campaign? Like, or a book form video game? Like that sounds like it could either be really fun because I love video games or it could be awful.
Yeah, so that's why I think Dungeon Crawler Carl is a good starting point because I'm reading it and I'm aware that like the gamey elements are my least favorite part. Yeah. So I'm like, I probably don't like this subgenre very much, but I just like the other parts of it. But it'll be things like, he'll be like fighting, a boss or whatever. And then at the end of it, he has like a little like voice that comes up, which is like, the information bar that would come up in a game. And it's like, you get 4 points on this. And you got a box where you got this item, and then it'll say like some like scrazzy joke or whatever, and then he'll go on and he'll talk to the characters that are in it, and the whole story will be going on. But whenever like a thing happens, he'll gain like 6 experience points or whatever, and then the goal is for him to get to a certain level so he can get to the next level of the dungeon.
Is it written to just be like a wink to the audience of like like we're reading a video game? Because it sounds like a gimmick.
I wouldn't say it's written too much with a wink. It's definitely not taking itself too seriously. Sure. Like, Bookborn just read it, and she liked it, which is the biggest endorsement I can give, because I would have guessed she wouldn't like it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But no, I would say just try it, both of you. And Leanna, I promise, Stephen Pacey
might make me try it.
Well, I don't think she likes it that much, but
yeah, but she's.
Oh, you guys are doing your TBR swap. I don't think she would make you because, she's told me that she actually tries to give you books that she thinks you would like.
She puts a Sanderson in every year, though, so I don't know.
But she said she thought you would like those books. So I think you like them more than you're willing to admit to yourself. But I don't know if you liked them. Does that make sense? Like I was there. I watched the stream, and you were like, "The Emperor's Soul is like pretty good." Like I was like, okay. And then when Alex mentioned The Emperor's Soul, the light in your eyes died, and I was like, I think you're being dramatic. Like,
because it's one of the only.
Or I was being nice to Bookborn.
It's one of the only novellas I've ever read that comes to mind, and I was just like, it was fine. It's like most Sanderson that I've read. It's fine.
You're fine, Alex. You're fine.
Thank you. Like I remember when I started reading Sanderson, and like, fuck, I have an entire shelf of his books. Like I've bought damn near everything he's ever written. Like I loved Mistborn, and I hated Era 2 Mistborn, and then like I really liked Warbringer, and then I hated Edge Dancer, and like it took me half the book.
Hating Edge Dancer is the valid take.
Yeah, but so speaking of Edge Dancer, I like because it's one of my most popular videos. Go figure, is dunking on that book, and every once in a while I'll still get comments that are like, he's writing like a 13-year-old girl, right? I'm just like, yeah. And I don't like it. Thank you.
It's terrible.
That's smarter, Alex.
That's so annoying to me because, like, I mean, like, look, I'll joke around with Leanna all the time, but like the fact that she doesn't like.
Oh, you're joking?
Yeah, I know. Has literally never bothered me one time. And so, like, when people like dislike an author and people are just like, "Look, but like you just didn't get it," I'm like, but like, who cares, man? Like, it's stupid. Like, Edge Dancer is stupid. I don't like it at all.
Just like I hated Elantris, and I gave it 1 star.
What boggles my mind, I DNF'd Elantris, but the prologue for Elantris, I was like, this is about to be my favorite Sanderson
so cool, right?
book ever. And then I was like, what happened? Instant off a cliff, like the rest. I was like, what? That was so good.
The most boring character ever.
I read Elantris last, like of the Consummate that was out at the time, and I had rock bottom expectations. So I actually like liked it quite a bit, but I don't remember it very well. I don't ever feel like I'm gonna reread it.
The prologue is so like atmospheric and grimdark and mysterious, and I was like,
I do remember liking the prologue quite a bit. Do you have your books picked out for your TBR swap with Bookborn already? Or are
I
you
mean,
just
I
gonna
do,
wait?
but like I kind of keep a list, and like I think I know which 4, but like there's like 1 or 2 that I'm like I might like switch.
Tweak, yeah. I always like when you guys do those because I try to guess which ones I think you guys will like and stuff. Although last year I feel like there was a bit more that I didn't know. So hopefully this year you guys choose all books I've read.
She keeps promising not to choose Yumi, even though I'm like, but it's so pretty. I want that on my shelf.
Oh yeah, because you guys send the books to each other, right? That's fun. Again, I think some things in Yumi would really bother you, and I don't think there's anything in Yumi that you would really
every
like.
time I bring up how pretty it is, she's like, but you're gonna hate it. There's no universe in which you like this book. And I'm like, but it's very beautiful.
Yeah, I just think like from the premise down, I don't think you're gonna like it. I just don't think there's gonna be like a thing like in Warbreaker where you like, I hate this specific thing. I just think you're gonna vaguely dislike all of it.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So you should read it.
And I mean, it's up to Bookborn. I will not read it just by myself for no reason. I don't hate myself that much.
What's an author you guys are looking forward to checking out in the near future that you haven't ever read?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's like the author, because like I've never heard of this author. I don't know if it's their debut or not. I just keep seeing like blurbs from people that are authors that I do like praising the shit out of this. So I'm like, all right, hype is real. But the Silverblood Promise,
I just finished that.
Is it good? Am I gonna hate it?
Yeah.
It is like relentlessly hyped by like Scott Lynch and Ed McDonald and some others.
If you hate it, it'll be one of your landmines. You know when I told you the one time that like there's just secret Liene landmines in any book, and if you hit one,
are they secret to me as well?
Yeah, they're secret to you. Like you'll just like hit a thing, and you're just like, oh, I hate.
Oh no! But the one that they decided to actually print on the book is Sebastian de Castell. Immediate red flag.
What do you have against the Greatcoats, Liene?
Let me count the things that I have against.
Is it his treatment of women and/or fridges?
It's also his treatment of the main male character, because that scene was what? What was that?
What? I had someone tell me what that scene was, like just vaguely, and it seems pretty messed up. But I will read the first book at the very least, see how I feel.
You'll read it, and when you get to that, you're just gonna be like, "What the like?"
But also the Purge.
It comes out of nowhere. But
why is the Purge part of the plot?
Because it was fun. I don't know. I do remember reading that. I was like, "This is literally happening right now." Like this, there's just the Purge. Okay.
So like as the book went on, it just like kept getting more insane.
No, like literally, like there's an entire. There's a whole ass city that just like has the Purge.
I don't understand what these books are about. Every time I hear stuff about them, I'm like, what?
It's a wild experience.
There's also
I'll give it that.
The absolute worst Here Comes the Cavalry I've ever read, because they literally appear out of nowhere for no reason. It's never set up. It just happens. It's like if if Rohan didn't exist in Lord of the Rings and they just showed up at the last second and beat everybody. Like that's levels of like, oh, these characters exist now. They're right there. They were just
I'm
over
not gonna like
that hill. Like it comes out of absolutely nowhere.
But also the thing about them like singing the laws, because then people will remember. So they just
See, I actually like that.
Spontaneously erupt into song. That is also the law. I was like, this is so dumb. Like I feel like you thought this was cool, but then when in execution, it's just so dumb and weird.
I think it's hilariously stupid, and that's why it's fun.
Because would you say that you think the author thinks it's dumb? Like, do you think he's?
I think he thinks it's clever.
He probably thought it was wetter. Wow, clever and witty, not wetter. No, Trader's Blade is actually a lot of fun though. I think Tyrant's Throne.
I will say I was not bored reading Trader's Blade because I was too much what the fuck the entire time.
They are a lot of fun. Now that I'm remembering things in those books, like so many things are just like random. Like I won't do any more spoilers. Something with a horse that you'll read about that was just like, oh, that's just also a thing that happens in this world. Sure. The third book damn near lost me though, because it turned into like this weird, like religious text for about 250 pages, and I was just like, is this just what this series is now? And I had to like choke down the rest of that book, and then book 4 was good. So I largely enjoyed it, and the main character, like the main group of gentlemen, are a lot of fun bouncing off of each other. It's
That's
almost
what I'm
like
hoping for. It's just
yeah.
liking the camaraderie
Well,
of the
because
main
like everyone
characters.
was like, people who love Scott Lynch should read the Traitor's Blade, and I was like, no, how dare you? Absolutely
So
not.
I would say about the Silver Bullet Promise, I totally see why James Logan or how he was influenced by Scott Lynch. I don't think it reads particularly like Scott Lynch, except that it's, you know, a vaguely thievy, scoundrelly dude in a city, and like the city is pretty like you see a lot of different facets of the underground in the city. That's really the only like overt influence.
Yeah.
I imagine you'll feel roughly the same as I did, which is that I think it was fun and it was readable, but it didn't blow me out of the water, and it felt a little bit too fetch questy, where it's like, oh, I got to go give this guy a thing, and then he'll give me a paper, and I can take that paper and trade it for an onion, and I can give that onion to a cook, and that cook will lead me down a path, and then eventually I'll know what's going on. It does that a little bit too much.
A Rube Goldberg device of a novel.
So to that point, though, I understand the Scott Lynch comparison strictly based off of how the main characters interact with each other. They're not written the same.
Yeah, it's just one is good and one is bad. That's the big difference.
Fine.
I can see.
I mean, you do think that the banter and everything is better in Gentleman Bastards.
Well, of course, because it's just better writing. But I enjoyed the Greatcoats, dynamic a lot. It's the best part of those books.
Are you going to read the new ones?
Maybe. Did it come out yet? I mean, it's like
it's
like a sequel but it's like way into the future with, I think, their grandkids or something. I forget what it was.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it was with the same Falkio. I thought it was with that guy still.
No, it's not a direct continuance of them. It's like, I think it's supposed to be their descendants or something. I don't remember.
I know Liena's not. Alex, you're a John Gwynne fan?
So I still am. I'll also put it that way. Faithful and the Fallen, I absolutely loved the entire way through. And then when I read Of Blood and Bone, I felt greatly that he was just retreading the same shit, because I was like, all right, we're 100 years into the future in this same land. But then like all of the same like angels versus demon stuff is happening, and like the characters are more or less on the same kind of arc. And I was like, this is just a worse version of Faithful and the Fallen. And then I really liked was Hunger of the Gods the first one?
Shadow was first.
I really liked that setup for that world, and I thought it was pretty promising. And then Hunger, I was just like basically checked out 3/4 of the way through, to the point where now I'm just like not that excited to continue it. Like I'll still read the new one when it comes out, but I'm not like, it was just like everything was a 10 out of 10 for me for Faithful and the Fallen. I absolutely loved it. And then it was like a step down, and then it was like, back up. And now it's like down here again. So
yeah, I'm kind of like the exact opposite of you, where I really liked Shadow of the Gods, and then I read Faithful and the Fallen and didn't really like it, and then read Hunger of the Gods. Or no, I read Hunger of the Gods first, and that was the first step down, because I agree with you. I just felt like everything was blood feuds and just traveling the whole time.
Yeah.
Thought you meant you actually read Hunger of the Gods first, and like as your first.
You read it out of order.
And I was like, no wonder that didn't work for you. Because
but you know what? I am just crazy enough to do something like that. I did skip 6 Wheel-of-Time books.
Malice has problems for sure. It's clunky. Not a lot of it's very well fleshed out. But like at the time that I read Malice, like I don't have 2 decades of like reading fantasy under my belt. So like I spent a long time in between like high school and then when I started BookTube of like not reading books. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have that built in, like this is the retread of everything else that's happened over the last 2 decades. So I really enjoyed it. It's not perfect, but then like I immediately went into the sequel series and I was just like, this feels exactly the same. Yeah. So like I think that was my biggest problem.
Faithful and the Fallen's really good, like in the same way that Red Rising is, of like just the pacing is so
just
relentless.
Absolutely take that back. Excuse you.
I said in the way that I wasn't finished my sentence.
No. Don't care.
Red Rising way more.
Take it back.
Like,
pick a different comparison.
No, I'm not. This is what a comparison is. In the sense that they're so fast paced that like if you're new to reading like that genre or reading in general, or just like aren't familiar with the tropes, you can just go straight through it in like hyper adrenaline. So I wish that I had read Faithful Fallen earlier, but I still think I have like criticisms outside of just the fact that I read it too late, which is that that should have been 3 books, not 4, because that's extremely repetitive.
That's fair.
But I'm really worried about the 3rd book in the Fury of the Gods. I don't think I'm going to like it, because I read Shadow of the Gods. Like, it was like one of the same as you were. It was like one of the first fantasy books I read when I like got back into fantasy. And I was like, this is amazing. And then everything else I've read since then, just been like, it's okay.
I think I also really like that one too, because it was around the same time that like I had binged all of The Last Kingdom and Vikings, and I was just like, just give me more, just whatever Norse-ish kind of stuff you're gonna throw at me. And then I read the follow-up, and I was just like, oh, you're just doing the same thing again, but worse, and it's boring, and there's like random bees that dig into people's veins and shit. I was like, what is this? I don't know. It was a whole.
That was one of the better parts, I thought.
I thought it was so dumb.
You just talked about like there being the purge in Sebastian de Castell,
which was also insanely stupid. It's an entire plot of that book. They're in a city and the purge happens, and he has to protect somebody like from being purged.
Yeah,
also, I won't say because it's super spoilery, but the person he's protecting during that, things to do with that person, ridiculous. Just ridiculous.
It's all a fever dream.
Did you ever end up reading Enemy of God, or did you just firmly decide you were DNFing that series? Yeah.
What series?
The sequel to The Winter King, The Warlord Chronicles.
Oh yeah,
you did not like it.
Not.
No. Everyone says Warlord's his best work.
It is. Oh, she's a hater.
Oh my. Okay, you know what you were saying about how like, you know, okay, sometimes there's going to be some essay, sure, but every page, constantly, all the time, that's always what we're doing, all of the time.
I don't think there's that much in the book.
But also, legitimately, okay, explain why this makes sense at all. So it's like, you know, this like chronicle, right? You know, that someone's like writing about what happened. But he writes the parts where he's being interrupted and is talking to somebody who's interrupting him chronicling. He writes that down. That's part of the chronicle. So it's like Monty Python and like what they bothered to carve. Like why would
those are different chapters? What are you talking about?
It's still ridiculous to include that.
I don't agree. I think you hated everything else and you're just looking for things.
This is the chronicle.
No, he's telling the story. He's sitting down and he's writing. And then the woman's like, please tell me the story of why Lancelot was a dipshit. I don't think he was really a dipshit. And then he's like, I'll tell you the story. And then he talks to her. And then the chapter will end. And he'll be like, and I'm tired and old. And she's like, please tell me more of the story, sir. And then he'll be like, all right, fine. And he tells her more of the story. That's very basic. I think you read it wrong, Leon. I think you need to get good.
Read it smarter next time.
Also, justice for Lancelot. That was ridiculous.
Oh, see, the fact that Lancelot sucks is one of the best parts about it.
It's not that he sucks. It's the way in which he sucks is so ridiculous and stupid and laughable. And like, I don't believe that this would actually like be a thing the way that you're describing it.
Disagree.
Also, the way the pagans are depicted, like, it's not like pagans were just like, oh, just like bleeding and pissing on everything because pagans do wild things. Like, that's what pagans do. It's just like, what? No.
Speaking of Lancelot, have either of you read Lancelot?
Yes. I thought it was okay.
All right, moving on.
No, I thought Liene was gonna start barking about stuff again. Yeah, I buddy read it with Tori from Tori Talks, and she hated it. She actually really didn't like it. I thought it was fine. I think it tried to be like literary fiction mixed with like adventure historical fiction a little bit too much, and like the pacing was really weird. And like the characters were just kind of fine. The thing that people always talk about it is the prose, and I thought the prose was very good. I haven't read the sequels though. Patrick says the sequels are really good, but I haven't read them.
I wanted to read his Viking series, but I haven't read that either. I've
read Hellmouth by him, and that was a really good novella. That actually was a really good novella when we were talking about novellas earlier. It's like a horror medieval historical fiction novella about these like knights that actually this place existed, and I forget the exact parts of it that really existed, but there was a place in like Central Europe somewhere where maybe Hungary, where people would just like disappear and they didn't know what happened to them. I can't remember the exact things, but they send like a squadron of knights to go like figure out what's going on in this like random hole in the ground, and then some crazy stuff starts happening.
Oh, I thought of a novella also, Prosper's Demon by KJ Parker.
You liked KJ Parker novella? That's crazy.
That's the first KJ Parker I ever read.
Is that the only KJ Parker? Oh no, you've read How to Defend a Wall with 6 Cities or whatever.
That's not what it's called.
How to get a wizard in medieval towns to
How to defend a wall in 6 cities. You got it. That's like the name.
I mean, the premise is absurd. How could I ever like a book like that?
It's called How to Lose a Wall in 7 Days.
10 walls I hate about you.
Exactly. Got it. Oh man.
Yeah, your thoughts on that book was kind of how I felt about the whole trilogy, which is just like very Captain Sparrow-y. Yeah.
But that's like so like not at all the same genre really, but like when I was talking about like Grady Hendrix and like balancing like drama and humor, like I feel like so many books, not just horror, any books that like try for like humor, like it's that like Marvel problem where like you need to let the serious moments though be serious because it makes the comedy funnier and it makes the drama more dramatic when you have that like juxtaposed instead of constantly like undermining it.
You can't undercut everything.
Yeah, and so like I think Scott Lynch is like that's why his books are so good too because like there's a lot of banter and comedy, but when something is like dark, when something is bad, he doesn't just like make it funny too or like throw in some jokes there. And Joe Abercrombie as well. There's like a lot of like you know jokes and stuff and a lot of sarcasm and cynicism, but like when something is truly dark and serious he just lets it be, and like that's what makes it hit.
I read the first like chapter-ish of The Folding Knife, and the style was significantly different, and I was like, oh, this is much more my speed. But I was like,
Prosper's Demon was nothing like I don't even know what whatever it's actually called.
How to Defend a Wall or How to Defend a City, and no shit, now I actually don't know. 60 ways to defend a walled city.
That's it.
Oh, yeah.
I almost called it How to Defend a Wall in 16 Steps, which is maybe a better title.
How to succeed at defending walls without really trying.
But you know, he does the same thing with his like his newest trilogy. It's like Savis Corax, and then each of the words like it deals with the dead, captures a castle, and I don't even know the third one. Yeah, one of the books he captures a castle. And I read the first 2 of those books, and they felt exactly the same as the other ones. Like, and I'm like, he can just only write one way in first person, which is just like the smarmy, marbly way.
16 Ways to Defend a Walled City is like if Nakomo Koska was the only character you ever followed. And it's like Nakomo Koska is like fun because he's not the only character.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Alex, have you read any KJ Parker?
Nope.
He's probably not going to now.
Yeah. I think you would like it at first. Like, I think it's your brand of humor, but then the same thing.
It's my brand of humor. Yeah.
It's the same thing all the time.
It's tiring. Yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
When I started reading it, I was like, oh, this is going to be like my favorite thing ever. And then it was just like relentless. I was like, okay, it's not funny anymore. Just stop.
Yeah, there are a couple like really good lines. Like I looked at my like highlights from the first 2 books, and each time it would be like the first 20% I would highlight a bunch and then just nothing else.
Well, I feel like in isolation, almost like any of the jokes in the book are good. It's just because like that's all it is constantly, and it's just exhausting. It's like there's a reason sitcoms are half an hour. Like I can't be doing this for like a whole book with nothing but this.
It's like how I feel about Wayne in Era 2 Mistborn, except he's never funny. He just keeps trying.
Oh, I've never heard you complain about that before.
And just tries again.
I've never heard you mention First Law before.
And again, and again, and again, and again.
Did you read Lost Metal, Alex?
No, I bought it when it came out, and I haven't actually read it.
I also have it.
That's not surprising. You should read. I'm going to try and convince Bookborn to give you Alloy Law.
I haven't.
So bad.
You would hate it. You would hate it so much. If all the Sanderson fans, actually knowing you would find a thing to love about it. You'd be like 5 stars. You know. Like,
well, I mean, in general, like the concept of like what he's doing with Mistborn, of like the progressing the world, like I completely, absolutely like co-sign that, love that. But like the execution, everyone says I will hate. But like the fact that he's doing that with the world, and that's what the next trilogy is, like I like that.
Can you elaborate, Jeeves? Because I don't know what you're talking about. We're just kind of goofing on the same author. Yeah,
I don't take it that seriously. I'm making jokes.
Yeah, we're just messing around.
But yeah, Wayne sucks. Wayne is like the one friend that you have that like told one funny joke one time and then thought that like, oh, everyone likes that. I'm just gonna say the exact same thing 800 more times, and it's not funny.
There's a joke that I think you will love in The Lost Metal, spoilers, where Wayne talks for an entire scene about farting in a chair. Peak comedy.
Oh, good. I'm gonna throw the book across the room.
I actually can't believe that like Sanderson wrote that and it got past like 6 edits or whatever. And each time he was like, no, that's funny. I'm going to keep that in.
Maybe they all wanted to take it out and he was like, that everything else can go, but that stays.
If one thing makes it in this book, it's going to be my farting in the chair joke.
If I don't get this joke, that's it. No more Cosmere.
Sanderson largely is not good at writing humor. At least humor that works for me. I'll put it that way.
Well, people say that a lot, and there's actually quite a lot of humor from Sanderson that I do like. It's just not the times. Like I think Pattern is hilarious, and I really like Light Song, and like the occasional one-off line is fine. It's like the characters that are meant to be funny,
comedic characters. Yeah.
I'm just like Wayne, Lopin.
I like Doomslug.
Doomslug is good. Did you ever read the second book of that series?
Not yet.
Oh, I don't think you'll like the third and fourth one. I think you should read the second one and then stop. Yeah.
That's what everyone says.
All right, guys. I'm going to start heading off here soon. My wife is definitely going to be going to bed soon, and she will be mad that I don't say goodnight to her. So anything else you guys want to say before we wrap up? Anything you guys have planned? Or Alex, are you going to make a video anytime soon or anything going on?
Video. That would require me to read and finish a book to talk about. So
a silo review, book to movie.
Yeah, maybe at some
talk
point.
about Lightbringer at some point. Talk about
yeah. If Liene
that new Christopher Accio book. Ever heard of him?
Lightbringer.
I think you should give him a try.
If you ever read Lightbringer, I will do a live show about it.
She'll reread the whole series in 1 week and then be like, oh, I'm going to start Lightbringer and then not read it. She'll read The Wolf again.
That's probably true. She's like, oh, I'm doing my readathon again for Joe Abercrombie. I'm like, all right. Go read all those again.
I think this was in 2023, not this year. Yeah, because this year is like when you started your new job, you haven't had as much time. But last year when you were starting the year, you did like a TBR where you did like 9 read-alongs of like 1 per month. And you're like, I'm rereading The Witcher. I'm rereading Red Rising. I'm doing this.
That was the worst.
And I was like, that is terrible.
It was awful. Never doing that again.
Was it just like a bunch of like cranked up to 3.5 speed?
Yeah. It was just like my favorite books of the year were just like something new, something I hadn't read before. Wow.
Oh yeah, Terry Goodkind. That's your worst take, I think, is Terry Goodkind.
I feel like the way you guys were also the way you guys were talking about how like, oh yeah, I haven't read like fantasy in a while, so like John Gwynne like felt like legit, and like I read Terry Goodkind in college. Yeah. Like when I was like I hadn't really read adult fantasy before, so and like rereading him now, like okay, like Stone of Tears, I stand by 5 stars. Love Stone of Tears. Every other book, I'm like, it's
is Stone of Tears the first one?
It's the second one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Damn. Because I do want to read Wizard's First Rule. That's the first
rule is garbage.
I do want to read it just to have like experienced it, but I know that I won't like it. So I'm like,
I can't stand the way he writes at all. It bothers me.
Yeah, the first one's not great.
Why is the second one good?
The second, because like when I think about liking that series, mostly I'm just thinking about Stone of Tears. Because I feel like just everything is like so much better. Like the world building is better, the characters are better. There's so many more like interesting concepts that he's like playing with, like that are like magical and speculative or philosophical, and not in like the I'm gonna like philosophize at you. Like there's just and there's some really cool characters that are introduced like in that book that are just like really fun characters. And there's like a baby gargoyle monster that gets like domesticated and is adorable. Like I love Stone of Tears.
Well, if I give the first book 1.5 stars or above, I will give Stone of Tears a try.
You won't regret it.
I probably will.
You won't, because then you'll get to lord it over me for the rest of your life.
I already know that it's bad. I don't need to read it to know that. It's just like so quizzical when like you read something that everybody likes and then you're like 1 star, and I'm like, really? This is the one? But that's what makes you, you know. I don't understand why people don't value the differences in all of our opinions and stuff.
Yeah, people should value me more. That's right.
Because people
That's the takeaway.
Yeah.
Everybody should value Liene.
People go to the
I can
internet to read
co-sign
friend their
that.
bias. They don't want to hear people disagree with them.
Yeah, unfortunately. But yeah, we're gonna wrap up here, guys. So thank you so much for joining me, guys, and out coming out of mild BookTube
Coming out of
retirement. And Liene, always a pleasure. I feel like we mostly just talk to bash TV shows that we don't like and books and stuff. So it's nice to have a little bit of positivity sprinkled in there once in a while. So
yeah, turns out you don't think all of my takes are bad, which I didn't know.
I feel like I only think like 50% of your takes are bad.
So like a D. Was that an F?
That's an F. You know what? I'll say 48%. You just barely pass. Yeah. All right. Bye, everybody. Chat, thank you so much for being so active tonight. It's been awesome. And have a good night, everybody. See you next time.
Bye, guys.